Chapter 454. Senior Ming Shi was the person she had decided to be little Ye's father. She wouldn't let anyone else hug him, Fenwu thought proudly. You. Senior Ming Shi, look at Fenwu. Eve was so angry that her heart hurt. She stomped her feet and complained to Ming Shi. Ming Shi coughed to cover it up. He turned his head uncomfortably and pretended not to see or hear anything. As a man, it was better not to get involved in a woman's quarrel. Fenwu turned Ming Shi's head to face her. She told you to look at me. So? What are you trying to do by looking at me with such a serious face? Have you seen it? Fenwu asked. Ming Shi said. He's done. Fenwu turned to face Eve. As soon as she said that, the onlookers who were watching the show coughed. This girl must have done it on purpose, but her serious expression was too real. They gave her acting skills full marks. You. Eve was so angry that her whole body was shaking. Those who didn't know better would think that she had gone crazy. Eve had never been able to get anything out of Fenwu, so she could only turn to look at Ming Shi. Are you deliberately trying to make me angry? Fenwu, you vicious woman. Senior Ming Shi, don't be fooled by her. She's very good. Ming Shi mimicked Fenwu and said seriously. Eve was hit hard when she heard that. She turned around and ran away crying. Fenwu looked at Ming Shi with shining eyes. She had been praised by Ming Shi. Happy Diane looked at Ming Shi in a daze. Her expression was as if she was looking at a heartless person. Brother Ming Shi, you've changed. Do you not like Diane anymore? Diane said sadly. I've always treated you as a sister. I thought you knew. Ming Shi secretly wiped away his cold sweat. He really didn't have any romantic feelings for Diane. Could these bystanders not look at him like he was a scumbag? You actually made such a beautiful girl sad, you scumbag. Sure enough, good-looking men were not good people. Scumbag, get lost. Let go of that girl and let me do it. The jealous single dogs beside them were crazily spamming the bullet screen in their hearts. Ming Shi, I don't know anything. Wah, you said that you'll marry me when I grow up. Diane felt wronged. When did I say something like that? Ming Shi thought for a while, but couldn't remember if he had ever said something like that to dig a hole for himself. Yes, when I was 3 years old, when we had a family dinner together, Diane sniffed and said with certainty. 3 years old. Ming Shi was speechless. He did play this game with Diane when he was young, but that was because Diane wasn't around. The other children didn't like to play with her because she cried too much. As a child several years older than Diane, Ming Shi naturally did the work of taking care of children that others didn't like to do. He didn't expect Diane, who was only 3 years old at the time, to remember it until now. That was just a game, Ming Shi looked at Diane and said seriously. He was afraid that Diane wouldn't understand if his expression wasn't serious enough. Wah! Brother Ming Shi, you're a heartless person. Diane burst into tears and ran away. Scumbag. What an infatuated girl. I've had a crush since I was 3 years old. Why hasn't any girl treated me like that? Good cabbages are all taken by pigs. The bullet screen continued to spam. Ming Shi's mouth twitched. He left with Fenwu without looking back. Before he left, he made a decision. He wouldn't come out to shop for a while. Never, Fenwu, the ice cream melted. Hello everyone, I'm your beautiful senior, Tamancha. Today is the Extreme Survival Challenge individual competition that everyone has been waiting for. Before the competition begins, I'd like to introduce today's commentator. Everyone, take a look at the person sitting beside me. Today's commentator is our kind and amiable Vice Principal. Let's welcome the Vice Principal with a round of applause. Clap, 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 clap. The students below were all clapping enthusiastically, afraid that they were not enthusiastic enough. Did they know that those fellows who talked behind the vice principal's back were being made fun of? If they clapped too slowly, the vice principal would think that they had something against him. That wouldn't be good. Seeing the enthusiastic applause from below, the vice principal expressed his satisfaction. He was indeed the most respected person in the school. Yes, only the principal was slightly more respected than him. Vice President, can you tell us some details about the competition? You've done a great job keeping the competition a secret. Until now, we still don't know what kind of format the individual competition will be held in. Can you tell us some insider information? Tamancha turned to the vice president and asked. Of course, not. If I tell you now, there won't be any surprises later. The vice principal's irritating voice rang out. Sighs of disappointment could be heard from below. They thought that they would be able to know some inside information in advance. How disappointing. At this time, Fenwu had already been sent to the preparation room, so she didn't know what was happening outside. The other contestants were also sent to the preparation room with Fenwu. The preparation room was big enough to accommodate so many people. The individual competition was different from the group competition. The group competition was based on the team's overall score, while the individual competition was based on the individual's individual score. Although most people were eliminated in the first round of the group competition, the school still gave everyone a chance. In the team competition, everyone's performance would be seen by the Lord God. The Lord God would grade everyone based on their performance. Those with a score of 60 or above could participate in the team competition, and the score would be included in the final overall score. This was good news for everyone. Fenwu's score was 85, which was considered a relatively high score. The Lord God didn't let those who were obviously dragging the team down in the group competition go too far. It was very satisfying. Fenwu didn't know about the Lord God's score at first. She always thought that she could participate in the individual competition as long as she signed up. Only after she came back did she realize that wasn't the case. The preparation room was full of people. They would enter the individual competition this time and face an even more brutal competition. Hello, contestants. Now, let me explain the rules of the individual competition. In the individual competition, we will no longer provide you with any survival tools. The only things you can bring into the competition are the items you chose in the group competition. After the competition begins, everyone will be given a map. The map that everyone receives is the same. At the end of the map, we will place a special item. Whoever obtains that item first will be the winner of the individual competition. For this competition, the Lord God will grade everyone based on their performance as usual. I hope that all of you will perform well and strive for a good result. Chapter 455. After the teacher finished speaking, he disappeared from the preparation room, leaving behind a group of contestants looking at each other. They could only use the items they had chosen in the previous team competition. This made many people feel that it was a little troublesome. In the previous team competition, due to their lack of experience, most of them had chosen items that were not suitable for them. Originally, everyone thought that they could choose again with their previous experience. They did not expect that they would even be deprived of the chance to choose again. Fortunately, this did not affect Fenwu too much. She had chosen items that were useful to her. Choosing again would not change her choice, so it did not matter whether she chose or not. As the competition began, Fenwu and the others were teleported into the arena. This time, the arena was actually an ice source. It was surrounded by ice and snow that could freeze people into ice pillars. As everyone can see, our contestants have already landed in the individual competition arena. However, the temperature in the arena is indeed a little low. Our contestants' powers have been sealed and they have become ordinary people. Can they withstand such a strong snowstorm? Can they really pass the challenge on this ice source that is less than -10 degrees Celsius? Tamancha looked at the snow-white area and those very obvious black dots on the screen excitedly. Her tone was both excited and worried. Huh? What's that flying down? Suddenly, large metal boxes appeared on the screen. There were also a few keys. These boxes and keys were falling from the sky. Vice Principal, can you explain to everyone if these boxes and keys are used for anything? Tamancha turned to ask the Vice Principal. Of course they are. These boxes contain warm items and other daily necessities. The keys are the only tools to open the boxes. If the contestants want to get warm clothes, they have to use the keys to open the boxes and get what they want from the boxes. Of course, not all boxes contain the necessities the contestants need. It is also possible that the boxes contain useless items or nothing at all. Through the Vice Principal's explanation, everyone finally understood what those boxes were about. If they were not wrong, there were only so many boxes, and the number of contestants was several times that number. In other words, a big battle was about to break out to fight for the essences in the boxes. At that moment, Fenwu was standing on a frozen lake. Beneath her feet was a hard block of ice. On the shore was an endless stretch of snow white. So cold. Fenwu frowned. Without the protection of Do-Chi, her physique was much better than ordinary people. Although she felt cold, she was not completely unable to withstand it. Fenwu took out the map and looked at it for a few minutes. The map was drawn rather clearly, but Fenwu could not understand it. I don't understand. Fenwu bit her lip and frowned. After looking at the map for a while, Fenwu chose a direction and walked forward. At this moment, a metal box and a key fell from the sky and landed in front of Fenwu. Fenwu held the key in her hand in a daze and looked at the metal box in front of her. Then, she grabbed the key and walked around the metal box. She walked over. She actually walked over just like that. The spectators who were watching this scene from the holographic screen almost fainted. Girl, are you sure you don't want to open the chest? There are clothes in the suitcase. Don't you know you're asking for a beating by not opening the box? Fenwu walked in the direction she had chosen. Not long after, she found another metal box. Fenwu looked at the metal box, then looked at the key in her hand, and then looked at the lock. So this box can be opened. Fenwu said in realization. Girl, can you be more reliable? The spectators silently complained. Then, everyone watched as this girl, who seemed to have a screw loose, used the key in her hand to open the box in front of her. When the box was opened, a thick beast skin coat appeared in front of Fenwu. It was a cloak made of fire fox fur, which was very warm. When Fenwu saw this, the corner of her mouth curled up. Although her little mouth had already turned purple from the cold, she still looked extremely cute. He decisively draped the fire fox cloak over his body and put the hat on his head. As expected, he was much warmer. Thus, the Fenwu girl smiled and walked in a certain direction. Not long after Fenwu left, a tall man walked to the ice lake where Fenwu had first landed. Oh my God! There's a box now! The man shouted excitedly. In his hand was the key he had just picked up. His face was full of excitement. My luck is really good. The competition has just started and I've already found a box. There's definitely something good inside. The man said with certainty. Then, he swaggered forward and opened the box without hesitation. The spectators under the screen were also curious. What kind of good things could be inside the box that the Fenwu girl missed? When the box was opened, everyone was stunned. A commonly seen zombie in the group competition appeared in front of the man. Before the man could react, it bit his throat. The tragic man was so tragic. The competition had only started for less than 10 minutes and he had already become the first person to withdraw from the competition. Even the spectators were drunk with his luck. What kind of luck is this? The spectators sighed. Luck is also a kind of strength. Someone acted like an expert from afar. That girl is really lucky. Thus, Fengwu had unknowingly become the lucky girl in the spectator's mouth. At this time, what was our lucky girl Fengwu doing? She was walking further and further down the wrong path. The Fengwu girl's ability to recognize maps was really bad. The main reason was that the person who drew it was too complicated. It exceeded the Fengwu girl's scope of understanding. After walking for another 10 minutes, the Fengwu girl found 2 more boxes. One of the boxes contained a large bag of dried meat and bread. These were things that the contestants urgently needed. Fengwu wanted to open the other box, but unfortunately, the key was wrong. She couldn't open the box and could only regretfully leave. Not long after Fengwu left, another girl came. The girl found a cotton coat in the box. Although the coat couldn't be compared to Fengwu's fire fox cloak, in this world of ice and snow, she believed that no one would care about it. The key couldn't open the other box. This made Fengwu realize that not all boxes could be opened with the key in her hand. After another hour, she didn't find any other boxes that could be opened. This made Fengwu somewhat regretful. She had already liked the game of opening boxes. It was just that there were a lot of people playing this game. As long as the box was opened by someone, it would disappear after a minute. Fengwu also encountered a few situations where someone opened a box in front of her. When she saw someone open a box, the Fengwu girl would turn around and leave. If it was someone else, there would definitely be a big fight over the ownership of the box. Chapter 456. The treasure chests that fell from the sky brought with them the supplies that the contestants needed. There were food and other necessities in the treasure chests, but there were also dangers that could kill people. So far, there were already more than 5 people who died from opening the chests. These 5 people were all careless when opening the chests and were bitten to death by zombies that ran out of the chests. Fengwu didn't know that zombies were opened from the chests. Other than Fengwu, most people also didn't know about this matter. Only a small number of people who had witnessed other people's misfortune knew that opening the chests was dangerous. If they were not careful, they could lose their lives here. Because of the treasure chests, some people's luck was good. They found warm winter clothes from the chests, and some people found some food. At least they didn't have to worry about freezing or starving to death. In this world of ice and snow, it was difficult to distinguish directions. Moreover, food wasn't easy to find. There weren't any wild vegetables, and it wasn't easy to find animals to eat. In this world of ice and snow, most of the small animals were hiding in their nests. Who would be so stupid as to come out and be food for humans in the winter? Snow began to fall from the sky. Moreover, the snow was getting heavier and heavier, and visibility was getting lower and lower. The contestants who had lost their magic and dochi found it difficult to walk in this kind of weather. Fengwu decisively found a place to set up a tent. Compared to the outside world, the inside of the tent was a lot warmer. Moreover, Fengwu's tent had a complete set of quilts and pillows. Staying in the tent, Fengwu girl wrapped herself in the quilt and ate dried meat. She didn't care whether it was ice or snow outside. Fengwu was lucky enough to have a tent to avoid the snow. Ming-Shi didn't have such equipment. Although he didn't have a tent, Ming-Shi still solved his food and clothing problem. He used a thick layer of snow to build himself an igloo. The inside of the igloo was simply many times warmer than outside. In addition, Ming-Shi's luck was good. He opened 2 chests and found a set of warm animal skin coat, a bag of biscuits and water. Relying on the igloo he built himself, Ming-Shi also successfully avoided the heavy snow. However, there were not many people who were as lucky as Fengwu and as smart as Ming-Shi. Most of the remaining people found a tree hole to hide in. Those who did not have a tree hole could only try their best to find a place to shelter from the snow and wind. This snowstorm almost froze most of them into ice sculptures. It had been snowing for the whole night. Fengwu had a good night's sleep and felt refreshed. As for the onlookers below the holographic screen, they watched as the contestants on the stage were crushed into popsicles by the wind and snow. Their hearts were filled with a sour feeling. Especially when they saw those well-known seniors in the school being abused, a feeling of excitement suddenly emerged in everyone's hearts. However, these people were also smart. No matter how happy they were in their hearts, they wouldn't talk nonsense outside. Who knew if the little bitches beside them were the old die-hard fans of those seniors? It was better to be careful. The lesson that the vice president had taught them was still vivid in their minds. Therefore, it was better to be careful when talking behind someone's back. If you were not careful, you could easily end up in a tragedy. Everyone, look! There's another treasure chest descending from the sky. Vice President, we want to know if the treasure chest will descend every day, or will it only descend at special times? Tamancha blinked her beautiful eyes and curiously asked the question that everyone wanted to know. Regarding this individual competition, there were too many questions that had not been explained. It was all up to the contestants to explore. Although this made the competition more interesting, it also made those who did not participate in the competition want to know more about the inside story. At the very least, they should know more than the contestants in the competition. If they knew as much as the contestants, then where did their sense of superiority come from? The vice president chuckled. This treasure chest is a benefit that we give to all the contestants. It will only appear in the first 3 days. It will randomly descend at a time every day. After 3 days, no more treasure chests will descend. The vice president's explanation finally satisfied everyone. So it was only 3 days. Once a day. That was good. If the treasure chest opened every day, then they would have signed up for it. How awesome would that be? The contestants did not know that the treasure chest would only appear in the first 3 days. After the 4th day, there would be no more treasure chests. Although the contestants did not know much, there was no lack of smart people among them. Smart people could guess that such a benefit would not appear every day. It would probably only appear in these 2 or 3 days. Regardless of whether they guessed it or not, everyone was extremely enthusiastic about opening the treasure chests. Moreover, there were often situations where people would fight over a chest. Fengwu had also dealt with 2 men who thought that she was easy to bully and guarded a chest. On the 2nd day, the situation of snatching treasure chests gradually appeared. Yesterday, everyone was still in a state of groping. After confirming that there would be good things in the treasure chests, all the contestants' enthusiasm for snatching treasure chests surged. Treasure chests were invested in by the general population and were not limited to a certain area. Therefore, if one wanted to obtain more treasure chests, it would depend on one's strength. Fengwu used a key to open a chest. There were 2 other treasure chests beside her. However, she only had 1 key in her hand and could not open the other 2 chests. Fortunately, in the only chest, she found a pair of snow boots. After obtaining the boots, Fengwu immediately put them on her feet. She was originally wearing a pair of leather shoes, which did not have much insulation. After putting on the boots, her entire feet warmed up. Wearing the new pair of shoes, she walked around in the snow and felt that her feet were warm and comfortable. Although there was only 1 chest, the Fengwu girl was very satisfied with the items she opened. After putting the old shoes into the space, Fengwu was about to leave when she suddenly felt a murderous aura coming from behind her. She leaped to the side and nimbly dodged the attack. After dodging, she frowned and looked at the place where she was originally standing. She saw a black arrow stuck in the bloody ground. The arrow carried an obvious murderous aura. If this arrow had really dodged Fengwu, Fengwu would probably have been teleported out. You actually dodged it. A sloppy voice suddenly sounded. Fengwu turned around and saw 2 men and a woman. The 3 of them were walking towards her. One of the men was holding a bow and arrow in his hand. It was obvious that he was the archer. The only woman among the 3 looked at Fengwu with disdain and said indifferently, what are you looking at? Hurry up and hand over the key on your body. Do you still want us to attack you? The three of them were wearing leather clothes. The woman even had a leather hat on her head. She looked very warm and lively. The two men looked at her with a hint of flattery in their eyes. It was obvious that this woman was the leader of this three-man team. Fengwu blinked. She did not want to bother with these people. She lifted her feet with the new shoes and chose a direction to walk in. Stop. Who allowed you to leave? Immediately hand over your key and the items from the treasure chests. If you don't hand them over, we will immediately send you out of the arena. The man standing beside the woman with a large sword in his hand said coldly. Chapter 457. Stop right there. Who allowed you to leave? Immediately hand over your key and the items you obtained from the treasure chest. If you don't hand them over, if you don't, we will immediately send you out of the arena. The man standing beside the woman with a large sword in his hand said coldly. As for how to send her out, needless to say, of course, it was to directly kill her. Fengwu heard the voice and turned her head. These are my things. Her words implied that she did not intend to hand them over. Looks like I have to show you my prowess. The man with the arrow suddenly aimed his bow at Fengwu. He looked at Fengwu with contempt. Although Fengwu dodged his arrow, he did not think that Fengwu was that powerful. In his opinion, it was at most good luck. You want to fight with me? Fengwu was a little excited. Recently, her Do-Chi had a breakthrough and she was looking for someone to practice with. Now, someone came knocking on her door. Fengwu girl squinted her eyes in excitement. She felt that she was awesome. Could it be his illusion? Why did he feel that the expressionless girl in front of him was suddenly in a good mood? The man with the bow shook his head. It must be his illusion. This was a little lowly. Just now, she was definitely afraid. She was definitely afraid. What good mood? It must be his illusion. Fight. Are you worthy of fighting with us? It's more like a one-sided slaughter. The man with the sword snorted disdainfully. The woman standing in the middle laughed even harder. She almost could not stop laughing. Ha ha ha. I'm dying of laughter. Who does she think she is? What kind of person does she think she is? What competition? She really thinks she is a root. She actually has the nerve to talk about a competition with us, ha ha ha. The woman laughed so hard that she almost choked. Fengwu was not angry at being laughed at like this. Were they admitting it or not? Was it a competition or not? Fengwu girl was a little distressed as she thought about it. If you don't want to fight, then I'm leaving. Fengwu girl had always thought that she was a person who cherished time. This time, she was aiming for first place. Her master had also told her to perform well in this competition. She couldn't let her master down. Thinking of this, she suddenly felt that she had wasted a lot of time. Someone must have overtaken her. She couldn't help but turn around and use her qigong to run in the direction she had determined. The robbery trio did not expect that someone would actually dare to escape from under their noses. The three of them were from the middle school. The two men were from the swordmaster department, while the woman was from the apothecary department. Since the three of them formed a small team, they relied on their numbers and the fact that everyone's abilities were sealed to ambush others. There were quite a number of people who had been ambushed by the three of them. The three of them didn't dare to rob just anyone. For example, the famous people in the school and the famous masters, they definitely had to go through them. It might not be difficult to rob those people here, but it wouldn't be good once they left the competition grounds. They were also afraid of being attacked and retaliated. They had also observed Fengwu girl, this robbery target, and confirmed that this girl was just a loner. Moreover, she was at most a second or third year student. Her strength was low, so they took action. Originally, they were 100% sure that the robbery would succeed. They didn't expect that the victim would not cooperate and immediately ran away. "Do we chase?" The man with the bow and arrow asked the woman in charge. The woman gritted her teeth, "Chase." Following the woman's order, the three of them immediately chased after her. After they chased for a while, they suddenly realized that they had lost her. "Quickly look for the footprints she left behind. It's been so long, the footprints should still be there." The woman gritted her teeth and said. After the two men looked around, their faces turned ugly. "There are no footprints. How is this possible?" The woman screamed. With such thick snow, how could there not be footprints? But when she looked at the ground, she only saw the footprints of the three of them. There were no other footprints at all. Fuck. She had seen a ghost. The robbery trio looked around but did not see Fengwu's shadow. Helpless, they could only give up. "Stop looking, let's go back." Unable to find her, the woman had no choice but to give up. Go. Go back." The man with the bow and arrow suddenly had a strange look on his face. Just now, he didn't notice that they seemed to have accidentally walked to a place that was difficult to find on the map. "What's wrong?" The woman noticed that his expression was strange and asked. "We seem to have lost our way." Fengwu did not know that three idiots chased after her and wanted to rob her. In the end, they got themselves lost. The Fengwu girl ran further and further down the wrong path. Unfortunately, she did not know at all. It was believed that if no one told her the right path, she would be lost to the ends of the earth. Under the screen, a bunch of onlookers were watching the competition. "Am I seeing things? That junior has already walked around the same place 3 times. A fourth-year boy pointed at Fengwu on the screen and said in disbelief. "You only just realized?" "I already knew that girl was bad with directions," the boy who had discovered it earlier said proudly. What was there to be proud of? Tamancha was speechless as she listened to the conversation below the stage. However, that little girl called Fengwu was quite interesting. As a broadcaster, it was impossible for Tamancha to focus all her attention on one person. However, after a short while, another image appeared. She once again used her charming, mischievous voice to drive the atmosphere and broadcast the exciting moment in the arena. Fengwu wasn't a person with no sense of direction. Having grown up in the mountains, she rarely got lost. However, this time, she had to admit that she was lost. The map was too abstract. Fengwu studied it for a long time but could not figure out which path to take. As expected, she gave up. After realizing that she had already walked around the same place 3 times, Fengwu calmly stopped by a frozen river. Seeing the frozen river, Fengwu's eyes lit up. If there was a river, there would be food. Fengwu decisively used her explosive strength to create a hole in the ice. She stood by the ice hole happily and looked at the clear flowing water. How should she catch them? Fengwu thought of the usual methods to catch fish. Method 1, go into the water to catch them. This method required her to take off her clothes and enter the water. If Fengwu had battle energy, she wouldn't mind. However, she was a young girl with a physique that surpassed ordinary people. Fengwu had always been self-aware. This method of catching fish in the water was rejected by her. Method 2, fishing. This method was very good, but our Fengwu girl suddenly remembered that she did not have a fishing rod. This was really sad news. Fengwu lowered her head and bit her cute lips. After thinking for a while, she finally thought of a method. 10 minutes later, the Fengwu girl filled an entire space with fish and once again stepped on the path to find the destination. Chapter 458. Although Fengwu didn't go in the right direction, she didn't panic because there was food in the space. She also had warm clothes on her body and feet. She walked for more than 2 hours. 2 hours later, Fengwu finally left the place where she had wandered for several times. Finally, she stopped wandering. 3 hours later, Feng sat on the back of an alpaca and freed her feet. After another hour, Feng Wu finally returned to the right path, but this time, she had fallen behind a lot. Xiao Wu, the place you want to go is very far. You need to go over the big snow mountain in front of you. I don't know what is behind the big mountain. I'm afraid you will have to find another way to ask for directions. The little alpaca's cute voice sounded in Feng Wu's ears. In other people's ears, this was just the sound of a magical beast's horn. They couldn't understand what the little alpaca was saying. Okay, thank you, Duo Duo. Duo Duo was the little alpaca's name. The little guy was thrown here by the Lord God. She was an alpaca and suddenly came to a world of ice and snow. Was it easy for her? Fortunately, she met Xiao Wu. Finally, there was someone who could be her companion. The lost Feng Wu and the lonely and confused little alpaca met by chance. One person and one beast quickly developed a friendship that transcended species. Thus, Feng Wu finally had an ally, and that was our cute little alpaca sister. Sitting on the alpaca's back, Feng Wu happily enjoyed the delicious jerky and bread. Sure enough, it felt good to not have to walk. Feng Wu nodded seriously. Compared to Feng Wu, the others were more miserable. They didn't find a magical beast that could be used as a means of transportation. The whole time, they walked with their own 2 feet. When they stepped on the snow, there was a deep hole. They also had to spend a lot of effort to pull their feet out. It was mentally tiring. Not far away from Feng Wu, the robber trio once again set out. Because they had failed to rob Feng Wu, the 3 of them learned from their painful experience and found another lone girl to rob. This girl was a 3rd-year mage student, and she was also a water mage with relatively low attack power. Although she was a water mage and didn't have high attack power, she had another advantage, and that was that she knew how to concoct potions. Moreover, the potions she refined were not inferior to the 3rd-year students of the pharmacist department. Among the 3rd years, she had always been known as a talented girl. Unfortunately, this talented girl had a shortcoming, and that was that her family background was not prominent. This girl was only the first daughter of a small noble family in decline. His family had no power or influence, so he was only slightly better off than an ordinary family. He really couldn't compare to a real aristocrat. This girl had a big heart. From the moment she entered the Notre Dame du Starlight, her goal was to catch a golden tortoise. In order to succeed in catching a golden tortoise, she had always been diligent in her studies. She was also relatively successful as a person. She had also put in a lot of hard work in the field of pharmaceutics. Although she claimed that her strength was about the same as the 3rd-year students of the pharmacist department, she knew her own strength. Her strength was not as strong as the rumors said. Pharmacists burned a lot of money in the early stages. Until now, she only knew how to concoct some relatively simple potions. The formulas of these potions were relatively simple, and the herbs required were not expensive. As for the other formulas that required some more expensive herbs, she had never touched them at all. Practicing potion concoction was too expensive. If she didn't have the support of someone behind her, wanting to rely on herself to succeed could be said to be an almost impossible task. This girl was also aiming for the quota to enter the Star Hall. In order to enter the Star Hall, she would have more opportunities to choose. This girl was really going all out. She clearly knew that she, a water mage without the strength to truss up a chicken, would not be able to play in this kind of competition. However, she still came, all for that 1 in a million chance. Only, she didn't expect that on the 2nd day of the individual competition, she would be blocked by 3 people with bad intentions. What do you want? The girl screamed in shock. Her voice was sharp and panicked. Cut the crap. Hand over the keys and everything you got from the box. The man with the bow pulled the bowstring and said impatiently. You want to rob me? Aren't you afraid of losing the right to compete? The girl widened her eyes in disbelief. Lose the right to compete? Ha 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 ha. She's too funny. Ha 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 ha, is she an idiot? She actually asked such a stupid question. The three robbers laughed so hard that they almost hugged their stomachs. They deeply suspected that this girl was sent by monkeys to be funny. The girl looked at the three people angrily. Her beautiful almond eyes were filled with anger and grievance. Ever since she entered the Notre Dame du Starlight, although she couldn't be compared to those dazzling super geniuses, she was still a little genius in the ordinary sense. Although she wasn't too famous, she definitely wouldn't disappear from the crowd. The little beauty who had always been loved by her classmates and the attention of her teachers suddenly felt the malicious intent from the world. After laughing enough, they still had to continue robbing. In this line of work, they had to abide by the rules. As the saying goes, a horse won't get fat without eating at night, and a thief won't leave empty-handed. In short, since they were going to rob her, there was no reason for them to return empty-handed. Alright, you're done with your show. Now hurry up and hand over everything you have. The archer's tone was getting more and more impatient. Alright, let's not talk anymore. Let's just do it. We don't have to waste time with her. The girl standing in the middle was worried that she would encounter someone who was good at running away again because of Fengwu. The shadow of the last robbery still hadn't disappeared, although it had only been a few hours. Do it. That's bad. When the girl heard this, her eyes flashed with anxiety. She turned around and ran in a direction. Running again. Do you think a mage like you can outrun us swordmasters? The man with the bow and arrow and the man with the long sword chased after him from the left and right. Due to the failure of the previous robbery, these two men had lost face in front of their goddess. This time, no matter what, they would not let the prey in their hands escape. The two men chased very quickly, while the woman ran desperately in front. The snow was very thick, and running on the snow was very exhausting. After running for a short while, she felt out of breath, and her face was full of sweat. A cold wind blew, and it was so cold that it made people shiver. The girl was light, and it was still okay for her to sink into the snow. The two men had a harder time chasing after her. Fortunately, they had good stamina. Just based on stamina, they could win against the useless mage. The girl kept running in front. Her stamina was already very fast, but she knew that she couldn't stop. She needed to get into the Star Hall. No matter what, she couldn't be eliminated here. No matter what, she couldn't be eliminated. Chapter 459. The only thing that had supported the woman all this time was her conviction. Although she had faith, the two men were getting closer and closer to her. In total, they were only a few steps away from each other. The woman could feel it. She could even hear the breathing of the people behind her. She was unwilling. She was unwilling to be eliminated here. She was unwilling to accept this. Just as she felt despair, she saw a young girl riding an alpaca not far from her. The girl's eyes lit up. She was like a person going against the current who had suddenly grabbed onto a life-saving rope. Help! Help! She screamed with all her might, hoping to attract the attention of the person in front of her so that they could come and save her. Taking a step back, even if that person did not save her, she had already appeared in the sights of the three villains. That young girl had warm clothes and a mount. The things on her body were much more valuable than hers. With this more valuable target, she might have a chance of escaping this calamity. Fengwu turned her head when she heard the sound. She only took a glance before looking away. Before the competition, a juror had said that the individual competition was a competition of individual results. There was no need to care about unfamiliar people. Even if there were acquaintances, there was no need to think about helping them. Because once they entered the competition, everyone was an opponent. They couldn't help their opponent. That girl was an opponent, so there was no need to help her. Fengwu nodded and made a decision without hesitation. The Fengwu girl had always been an obedient girl. After making a decision, she naturally turned a blind eye to the other party's pleas for help. Fuck. This girl is pretending not to hear me. The fleeing girl was furious. Fortunately, she noticed that the person chasing after her had seen the girl. Perhaps she still had hope. Look, isn't that girl the one who escaped from our hands this morning? The bow-wielding man exclaimed. His eyes lit up as he looked at Fengwu. His gaze was like that of a vulture that had identified its prey. It really is that little slut. Little slut, let's see where you can run to this time. The woman glared fiercely at Fengwu, her beautiful eyes filled with hatred. The three of them hated Fengwu to no end. Because of her, they had tasted their first failure. Moreover, they had to learn how to walk in the mountains for a full 3 hours before they could return to the right path. And Fengwu, who had caused them to fall to that point, was of course the person they hated the most. After discovering the existence of an even more aggro value, the three of them were too lazy to pay attention to the new target and chased after Fengwu. He really did not care about her anymore. The young girl's mouth was slightly agape. She couldn't believe that she had actually escaped a calamity. If he didn't leave now, when would he? The girl immediately fled in the opposite direction. At this time, she didn't care if she had any strength left. Even if she didn't, she had to squeeze out some strength. Fortunately, the three of them had already rushed towards Fengwu and had no intention of paying any attention to her. This girl was also not a kind-hearted saint. If she was a saint, she wouldn't have thought of using Fengwu to attract the attention of these people so that she could escape. After running for a distance and making sure that she wouldn't be caught, she looked at Fengwu with pity, then turned around and left without looking back. Slut! Stop right there. Do you hear me? Stop right there. The woman shouted and chased after her. Little slut, don't think about escaping. We were careless last time. This time, you can rest and escape. The three of them shouted at Fengwu. Fengwu sat on the alpaca and turned around. She saw the three people who were slightly familiar. After looking at them for 3 seconds, she came to a conclusion. She didn't know these people. Fengwu rode the little alpaca and ran away briskly in the snow. The 4 little hooves of the alpaca ran so fast that they only left shallow footprints in the snow. They didn't even sink into the snow. Before the three of them ran in front of Fengwu, the alpaca girl leisurely ran away with the Fengwu girl, leaving behind the failed robbery trio. She ran away again. The three of them angrily scratched their heads. They turned around and wanted to find that unlucky girl with no fish or shrimp, but they couldn't find even a strand of hair. The three of them stood in the snow. Today must be a disaster for them. They actually failed 3 times in a row. The Fengwu girl, who had just left, didn't know what happened behind her. She rode the alpaca girl duo and ran happily on the road to the finish line. After walking for another half an hour, Fengwu met some acquaintances. This time, she met 2 girls from the next class. Fengwu didn't remember their names, but she saw them in the combat class between the 2 classes. When the 2 girls saw Fengwu, their eyes lit up. Especially when they saw the alpaca Fengwu was sitting on, their eyes lit up even more. Xiao Wu, I didn't expect to meet you. It's fate that brought us together. Why don't we form an alliance and go together? The 2 girls stared at Fengwu's alpaca with a fervent expression. No. Fengwu shook her head and refused without giving them any face. Why? Are you looking down on us? The 2 girls angrily stared at Fengwu as if they were insulted. You guys are too weak. I'll be at a disadvantage if I form an alliance with you. Fengwu sat on the alpaca girl and looked at the 2 girls with a serious expression. Fengwu wasn't stupid. At the very least, she remembered that a juror and her master told her that if she needed to find someone to form an alliance with during the competition, she couldn't find someone who was too weak. Otherwise, it wouldn't be good for her. The Fengwu girl was very obedient. Since she heard this, she would naturally do as she was told. The two girls were so angry that they almost vomited blood. They also knew that their fighting strength wasn't good enough, but now that everyone couldn't use their battle chi, they were competing with physical strength and strength. In these two aspects, they wouldn't necessarily lose to Fengwu. Damn it, if it weren't for her strength in the top 10 of the grade, they wouldn't have cared about Fengwu with a bad reputation. Because of what happened last year, many people in the school didn't have a good impression of her. Last year, Fengwu was always at the center of rumors. Even if the school cleared the rumor that she was unmarried and had a child, the news of her proposing to Ming Shi and bullying her classmates in the dormitory still spread. That day, Rika was found naked in the female dormitory area. It wasn't a secret. Many girls didn't have a good impression of Fengwu because of how she treated her roommates. Of course, there were some girls who didn't believe Rika's words, but that portion was relatively small. Of course, there weren't many who hated Fengwu. Most people didn't spend time to pay attention to this kind of boring gossip. These two girls didn't perform well in the swordsman department. This made them, who were always called geniuses at home, somewhat unable to accept it. However, there were as many geniuses as dogs in the Notre Dame du Starlight. What could they do if they didn't accept it? Most people had a kind of envy and jealousy towards the top 10 positions of the grade. There weren't any bad rumors about the other 9 positions. Only Fengwu's reputation became a hard hit. Chapter 460. Anyone who was unconvinced or jealous of the 10th seat would bring up Fengwu. There were even people who wanted to challenge Fengwu's 10th seat, but so far, no one had succeeded. Fengwu was still sitting at the end of the 10th seat. If it weren't for the fact that her grades were too low, some people would have asserted that with Fengwu's ability, she would definitely have a place in the top 3. Some people agreed with this statement, while others didn't believe it. These two people were among those who didn't believe it. What do you mean? Kindness doesn't pay off. If it wasn't for the fact that we pitied you, we wouldn't be with a loner like you. The two girls were so angry that their faces turned red. Oh, I don't need your pity. You're too weak. You should take pity on yourself first. Fengwu said with a serious face. Fuck. Don't poke at people's hearts like that. So what if you're strong? No matter how strong you are, you've just been promoted to the 2nd year. There are still 5 years above you. The strong people of the 5 years are gathered here. You're only at the end of the 10th seat. The two girls madly ridiculed Fengwu in their hearts. The two girls wanted to say something, but Fengwu didn't give them a chance. She rode on Little Alpaca and continued forward. She actually left just like that. The two girls were so angry that they almost fell down. You're so fucking awesome. Little Alpaca was much more familiar with the terrain than Fengwu. It led Fengwu all the way to the big snow mountain on the map. Now, they only needed to pass through the snow mountain to leave this place. The branches on the snow mountain were covered with a thick layer of snow. There was no green at all. After rushing for a day, Fengwu found an open space before dark and started a fire. She even set up a tent. They were going to spend the night here. It was only the 2nd day of the competition. The map given by the school wasn't a map of a small place. It included a large area. After passing through the snow mountain, there was a desert. After passing through the desert, there was a source of grass. After passing through the grassland, there was the volcano. And the thing they were looking for in the end of the competition was in the volcano. Fengwu roasts over the fire. Thinking about the fish in the space, she is a little annoyed. Although she caught a lot of fish, she suddenly remembered that she didn't know how to cook. Moreover, before the competition, Ajay had repeatedly told her not to cook by herself. That was because he was afraid that she would poison herself to death. If she had to withdraw from the competition because she was poisoned to death, she would definitely become a legend of the Notre Dame du Starlight. At that time, the Fenwu girl would probably become a celebrity in the school until she graduated. She would be engraved in the hearts of all the juniors, and they would take it as a warning. Fenwu didn't know what Ajur was thinking. She only knew that she had to do what she had promised. Her master had said that a person must be trustworthy. But what should she do with the fish? Fenwu couldn't think of a good idea until she fell asleep. The next day, when she was climbing the mountain on the alpaca, her little head was still thinking about the fish. After walking for a while and eating lunch, the Heavenly Treasure Chest event started again. The Heavenly Treasure Chest immediately attracted the attention of the strong people who had already arrived at the mountain marked on the map. This time, Fenwu received a chest. Inside the chest were several water bags. The water bags were filled with pure spirit spring water. This spirit spring water was the most common mortal-grade spirit spring water. After drinking it, it could quickly restore one's strength and relieve the fatigue caused by the journey. In the chest, there were 10 sheepskin bags filled with spirit spring water. Although there was no shortage of water in the snow mountain, Fenwu still carefully collected the spirit spring water. After receiving the spirit spring water, Fenwu didn't find any other chests. Instead, there were 2 screams in the woods. It should be someone who opened the chests and brought out zombies. Whether or not they died in the mouths of the zombies was unknown. Erin killed the zombies without even batting an eyelid. She was a lone ranger, and she was determined to get a spot in the Special Pearl mission team. There was no need to find some weak fellows to drag her down. Irene was now in the top 5 of the year. If it wasn't for the fact that she wanted to preserve her strength and didn't want to attract the attention of the female lead too early, it wasn't impossible for her to fight for first place. The female lead was only in the top 3. They didn't expect that there would be Ajur. Ajur's strength was too strong. Even the female lead was only second in the year. Seeing that the female lead didn't get first place, Irene rejoiced in her misfortune for a long time. She had read the original novel, and naturally knew that the female lead wasn't someone who liked to be under others. Although she was flexible, she didn't like others suppressing her. In the original novel, Ajur had never participated in the top 10 ranking competition of the year. She didn't know why he would participate this time. But seeing the female lead a loss, she was happy in her heart. Along the way, she had opened a total of 5 chests. 4 of them were relatively useful things. Only the 5th one had a zombie. She cursed Longza Camel's bad taste in her heart. She was now even more certain that this Longza Camel was a guy from another world. Moreover, he must have been a fan of novels before he crossed over. Look at what he made. If it wasn't a virtual world like a holographic online game, then it was the apocalypse like in zombie novels. Fortunately, that guy from another world came a few thousand years earlier. If he came now, it would be very lively. Now in this world, there were already 2 women from another world, and 1 man from another world. If another guy with a male lead halo appeared, then she, as a female lead from another world, didn't need to live anymore. After dealing with the zombies, Irene continued to move forward. But she had only taken a few steps when she saw a guy riding on a through the forest. She didn't see wrongly, right? Wasn't that the legendary mythical beast? Erin was shocked. Fuck. Who had the ability to get a mount? Could it be that he got it from opening chests? She was convinced by his luck. She thought that her luck was good enough. Although she only opened 5 chests in 3 days, the chests were all necessities. There were clothes, food, shoes, and weapons in the tent. She didn't expect that someone would be able to get a mythical beast from a chest. Could it be that this thing was not supposed to be opened by the female lead? There was actually someone who could snatch the female lead Zicheng's female lead halo. Awesome! As the mythical beast approached, she finally saw the person's appearance. She wasn't very close before, so she mainly saw the. As for the person sitting on the, other than knowing that it wasn't Zicheng, she didn't know who was sitting on it. Only when she got closer did she realize that it was an acquaintance. Wasn't this Fengwu who had always been good friends with Ajur? In fact, when she knew that Ajur was the successor of the Four-God Seal, she really wanted to brush up on Ajur's favorability. Unfortunately, that guy's favorability was too hard to brush up. She heard that Zicheng also tried to curry favor with him for a period of time, but didn't get any results. Chapter 461. Irene, who was originally a little frustrated, suddenly felt a lot better after seeing that even Zicheng, who had the halo of the female lead, had failed. She no longer felt conflicted. Since then, she didn't deliberately try to curry favor with Ajur. The two of them could be considered as acquaintances in the sorcerer department. Irene had stayed in this strange world for so long that she was no longer as impatient as when she first arrived. When she first came to this strange world, she thought about how to change her fate every day so that she wouldn't be cannon fodder for the female lead. Most of her interactions with people had the intention to use them. Now that she thought about it, what she did wasn't right. As the saying goes, if you put yourself in someone else's shoes, those who weren't scheming naturally wouldn't be able to tell if you were sincere or not. However, if you met those aristocratic families, they might not necessarily not be able to see through your thoughts. She didn't have Zicheng's favorability system to hide her true feelings. Anyone who interacted with her would feel that they were treated with sincerity, so it was easy for Zicheng to make friends. However, she, who didn't have a cheat, couldn't cheat if she wanted to make friends with people. After reflecting on herself, Irene also changed a lot. She was no longer as utilitarian as before. This could be considered a good change. In short, what she wanted to say was that Ajur wasn't a person who was easy to get close to, and for so long, Ajur had been sincerely protecting Fengwu. In her eyes, she wasn't a simple woman. How could someone who could handle Ajur be a simple person? Seeing Fengwu getting closer and closer to her, Irene wondered if she should go up and say hello. No matter what, she was still someone she knew. Xiao Wu, I didn't expect to meet you. Irene thought for a moment and took the initiative to go up and say hello. Oh, hello. Fengwu nodded. She knew someone who was quite strong. Your alligator is really good. Did you get it from opening a chest? Irene was very flattered by this alligator. This is an alpaca. Fengwu looked at her seriously and corrected her mistake. The corners of Irene's mouth twitched. Wasn't an alpaca just an alpaca? What was the difference? Well, alpaca it is. It's the same anyway. Irene didn't want to get entangled in such a trivial matter. Did you get this from opening the box? I really envy you. Irene wasn't being polite. She was really envious. Being able to get a mount could save a lot of trouble. Moreover, she saw that this feet only left a shallow mark on the snow. Her feet didn't even sink into the snow. As expected of a divine beast. No, I met Duo on the road. Fengwu didn't hide it, but she didn't say much either. I met him on the way. Irene exclaimed softly in surprise. What kind of luck was this to encounter a mount on the road? Wasn't this the treatment that only the female lead deserved? Fengwu nodded. She was right. You're so lucky. Irene could only say this sentence in envy. Why wasn't her luck so good? Just as the two of them were talking, they heard a voice. They saw a man and a woman walking towards them from not too far away. The man was tall and powerful, and his appearance was extraordinarily handsome. The woman was petite and exquisite, but her body was explosively good. Moreover, she also had a beautiful face that was difficult to look at. The woman was a little weak, and her body had a delicate flower temperament that required people to take pity on her. Irene only took a glance at the woman and made an evaluation. White lotus green tea framing. Fengwu didn't have any special feelings. No matter what others did, it had nothing to do with her. A juror had told her not to meddle in other people's business. Finally, the two people walked over. The woman looked at Fenwu's alpaca with envy. The love in her eyes was about to overflow. White Lotus. Next, they would definitely want to force a sale. She was familiar with this trick. Whether it was television dramas or novels, wasn't it always like this? Hey, the two of you, hand over that alpaca immediately. If you don't hand it over, don't blame this senior for being merciless. The man was obviously one of the weak girl's pursuers. These two were both fifth-year students. Fenwu didn't know these two people, but Irene knew them. Although they hadn't interacted before, she knew some things about them. This man was a famous expert in the fifth years. Although he didn't enter the top 10, he was recognized as the number one person under the top 10. The other woman was even more famous. She was the flower of the fifth years and had countless pursuers. With her delicate appearance and resentful eyes, she captured the hearts of many men. This man should be the subject under the skirt of this year's flower. It was obvious that the number one person under the top 10 of the fifth years was going to steal someone else's mount for the flower of the year. However, it shouldn't be easy to steal Fenwu's things. After interacting with her a few times, she knew that this girl called Fenwu was unfathomable. If she hadn't hinted several times that this girl wasn't reborn or transmigrated, she would have thought that she had another transmigrator. Duo is my friend. I won't give it to you. Fenwu refused with a serious face. Those who wanted to steal her friends were all bad people. In the past, the hunters at the foot of the mountain almost killed her good friend Xiao Mei. Fortunately, Xiao Mei was lucky and ran away. Xiao Mei said that the people at the foot of the mountain were scary and would eat them. She felt that this man and woman must be the kind of bad people that Xiao Mei said would eat her friends. Thus, the Fenwu girl looked at the two with a guarded face. If they dared to steal Duo, she would beat them. Master said before, the bigger the fist, the more reason. So Bai Lian Feng, what the hell are you talking about with the Fenwu girl? Bai Lian Feng, that's her own understanding. Don't blame me. Junior, I really like this alpaca. Can I use a bag of water to exchange with you? Please give it to me. I will definitely treat it well. The flower of the year said pitifully. That pitiful look made it seem like if Fenwu didn't agree, she would be a bad person that couldn't be tolerated by the heavens. A bag of water. Irene cursed in her heart. She wanted to exchange a bag of water for a mount. Did she think this place was a desert? This was the Great Snow Mountain. It lacked everything except water. The flower of the year must know this, which was why she was willing to trade the bag of water so easily. She cursed in her heart. If this was a black-hearted White Lotus, her skill at pretending to be weak and kind was almost on par with the female lead. I won't exchange. Duo is my friend. I can't exchange. Fenwu's small eyebrows wrinkled. She already said that she wouldn't exchange. These two people were really annoying. You refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. Xiao Mei is willing to exchange with you. That's your good fortune. You actually dare to disregard good fortune. Even if you're from our swordmaster department, I still can't tolerate you. The man shouted, looking at her with disdain as if an ant dared to insult his goddess. Xiuwu, don't be like this. Junior just can't bear to part with her little pet. Don't scare them. Xiao Mei said with a face full of grievance but pretending to be strong. Chapter 462. Fuck, this girl had the nerve to act like she was wronged in front of these two second-year junior sisters. Irene observed Little Lotus from a close distance and truly felt that there were so many high-quality existences by her side. Xiao Mei, don't speak up for them. These two fellows don't know what's good for them. Let me, as their senior, teach them how to behave. Saying this, he raised his large sword and rushed towards Fenwu with a sinister smile. When he rushed towards Fengwu, that little lotus called Sha Mei actually let out a panicked cry. Then she looked anxiously at the burly man called Xiao Wu. After worrying about Xiao Wu, she looked at Fengwu. She acted like a weak girl who didn't know what to do. Irene didn't have the time to watch her act. Right now, she and Fengwu were on the same side in the eyes of these two people. If anything happened to Fengwu, the next one to suffer would definitely be her. So at this time, she definitely couldn't stay out of this alone. She had to firmly unite with Fengwu and the two of them get rid of this scumbag couple. Since she wanted to do it, Irene thought that her reaction wasn't slow. She took out a new long sword from her space and wanted to help Fengwu fight the enemy. But the next scene told her that she was thinking too much. The other party didn't need her help at all. She saw Fengwu lightly jump off the alpaca and land on the snow. There wasn't a single footprint left on the snow. But this inconceivable scene wasn't noticed by anyone. These people were all watching to see if Fengwu would be killed by the sword. The man's sword was menacing and Irene could even feel the sword's aura on her face. Fengwu didn't even try to block it. She just kicked towards her wide-open door. Seeing Fengwu's kick, Wuxia didn't care. How much strength could a woman have? Now that she couldn't use her strength, there was nothing to be afraid of. Thinking of this, the martial cultivator didn't even bother to block, and his sword didn't slow down in the slightest. In the eyes of the martial cultivator, this was nothing more than a showy kick, but it sent him flying. He slid along the snowy ground for no less than 2 meters before coming to a stop. Ah! Sha Mei screamed in fright. Even a blind person could see the shock in her eyes. Even in her dreams, Sha Mei had never thought that someone as powerful as Xiao Wu would be sent flying by a kick from a junior. This was simply too unbelievable. After the scream, she even forgot to check on Xiao Wu's injuries. She was too shocked. Fengwu calmly retracted her foot and looked at the groaning Xiao Wu on the ground. "Didn't you want to teach me how to behave?" Fengwu looked at Xiao Wu who was lying on the ground and asked in puzzlement. Fengwu was very puzzled. Why did he have to use a sword to attack her when he was teaching her how to be a human? Could it be that his sword moves contained the principles of being a human? But this person really didn't have any rules. She had been learning the principles of being a human from her master since she was a child. He wasn't her master, so how could he have the qualifications to teach her? He even wanted to hit her. Bad person, in the future, he definitely wouldn't be able to find a disciple who was willing to be taught how to be a human. Xiao Wu was so angry that he almost vomited blood. What was the meaning of this? Was she mocking him? Even in his dreams, Xiao Wu would never have thought that a little junior would have such great strength. The strength of this kick was simply enough to shatter his internal organs. What kind of monstrous strength was this? Irene's small mouth was wide open. Such great strength. 100-gene strong man was sent flying with a kick. Young girl, you're so awesome. Is there anyone in your family? Smelly girl, just now I was careless. Let's do it again. Xiao Wu crawled up from the snowy ground and looked at Fengwu's eyes with unwillingness and anger. Fengwu tilted her head. There was a trace of puzzlement in her eyes. I have a master. I don't need you to teach me how to be a human. You should teach your own disciple. Fengwu said with a serious face. That serious little face simply couldn't be too serious. Although it sounded like she was mocking him, she said it with a bit of a silly feeling. Xiao Wu almost vomited blood. Damn smelly girl. Wasn't I just carelessly kicked by you? What are you so proud of? Wait until we get outside. Brother will kill you in minutes. Xiao Wu wanted to say a few ruthless words to attack Fengwu. He didn't expect that this girl didn't play by the rules. She flipped over on the alpaca and directly left. Wanting to chase after an alpaca with the strength of a human's legs was obviously an impossible task. Irene wasn't stupid. If she didn't leave now, when would she? When Sha Mei and Xiao Wu came back to their senses, even Irene had already disappeared. Fuck, why did she run so fast? I haven't finished my words yet. Sha Mei's heart was filled with regret for the alpaca that was almost in her hands. The next time she saw it, she must definitely get that alpaca. Fengwu didn't know what the man and woman she left behind were thinking. Riding the alpaca, Fengwu freely traversed through the forest. In a moment of carelessness, she rushed to the front. She overtook the people in front of her one by one and gradually walked in front of the majority. On the road, there were quite a few people who had ideas about the alpaca sister. However, after seeing Fengwu's terrifying speed and monstrous strength, most of them gave up. This girl was too savage. They couldn't protect her. Fengwu didn't meet many people. This mountain was very big. Crossing the big snow mountain didn't necessarily require this path. There were still many people who didn't meet Fengwu. When night was about to arrive, Fengwu met another acquaintance. This time, it was a familiar person. Xiao Wu. Mo Gui couldn't believe that they could meet so early in such a big map. What kind of fate was this? Mo Gui. Fengwu blinked twice. She'd met a friend. On the screen outside the arena, there were scenes from time to time. It showed two people fighting over the daily necessities in the treasure chests. There were also scenes where they formed a temporary alliance to deal with others. Although the competition had only started 3 days ago, those who were lucky enough to meet familiar people had already formed an alliance. There were also some who were unlucky and hadn't met a familiar person yet, so they could only fight alone. Under the projection of the screen, Fengwu and Sha Mei's confrontation was transmitted to the screen. Sha Mei and Mo Gui didn't know that they had become the female lead for once, and that Xiaowu's act of stealing a junior's mount was also disgraceful by the boys. So what if you stole it? It's a competition anyway. It's not a big deal. But you actually fucking lost. Aren't you embarrassing us fifth years? A fifth-year swordsman student said with a pained expression. That's right. Xiaowu is usually so arrogant, but he actually lost to a second-year girl. Let's see what he has to be proud of now. He's usually so arrogant, but he still lost in the end. He can't even beat a second-year girl, and he still has the nerve to say that he's number one under the 10 seats. How can he be so arrogant? Chapter 463. It was unknown if it was because Xiaowu was a failure as a person, but seeing him being taught a lesson by Fengwu, the students who were usually bullied by him all had a happy expression on their faces. He even held a conference to criticize martial arts. From his tyrannical and unreasonable personality, to him using his fists in the name of sparring, he would often beat people until they couldn't get out of bed for 10 days to half a month. What's more, as long as someone didn't go his way, he would bring a group of lackeys who licked his smelly feet to teach that person a lesson. His actions were called dark and ruthless, making it impossible for people to sue him. If one were to count all of these, it wouldn't be strange for the Martial Cultivation Society to not have good relations with others. If you ask me, Xiaowu's biggest problem isn't his temper, but his eyes. To be able to fancy a pretentious woman like Sha Mei, his eyes must be blind. The boys had deep resentment towards Xiaowu, while the girls had been dissatisfied with Sha Mei for a long time. Sha Mei, as the flower of the year, was also a black-hearted little white lotus. Naturally, she didn't lack in trapping the girls who didn't get along with her to highlight her kind and gentle beauty. Xiaowu was a failure as a person among the boys, and Sha Mei was a failure as a person among the girls. Except for one or two brainless little white lotuses who would be attracted by Sha Mei's white lotus temperament, the other girls wouldn't have any good expressions towards Sha Mei. Sha Mei, that kind of woman, I really don't know what you guys see in her. Besides her face and her temper of pretending to be wronged, what part of her is attractive? A girl angrily said. Although this girl and Sha Mei weren't in the same class, she had also been tricked by her. Originally, the girl had a boyfriend who had just started dating. Their relationship had just stabilized when the boyfriend met Xia Mei. Xia Mei used some unknown method to become friends with the girl's boyfriend. She also schemed against the girl to make the girl's boyfriend misunderstand her as a jealous woman who couldn't tolerate others. The girl's temperament wasn't the kind of character that would bow and scrape for a man, so the two broke up after a few big quarrels. It was natural for the girl to hate Xia Mei. How could she not hate her boyfriend? The most hateful thing was that Xia Mei wasn't interested in her boyfriend at all. She just liked to make men infatuated with her. She liked to make those men slap their real girlfriends' faces for her. Of course, Xia Mei didn't say this herself, but several victims analyzed Xia Mei's behavior pattern. It was because of this reason that these girls who had been deeply harmed by Xia Mei hated her so much. That's right. Men are just so stupid. They can't even figure out what's going on after being deceived by a few drops of tears and pitiful eyes. Sure enough, men are all beasts who think with their lower bodies. You're right, that's how it is. Xia Mei, that bitch, I wish her a horrible death. A group of male students silently retreated to the side. Although they didn't feel that Xia Mei had done anything wrong, Xia Mei was so good. She cared so much about those little junior brothers and classmates who were bullied by Xiuwu. If it wasn't for Xia Mei's occasional persuasion, those people would have been bullied even more miserably. However, there was a fourth-year male student who couldn't stand it and stood up to speak for Xia Mei. You guys are jealous of senior sister Xia Mei. Senior sister Xia Mei is the kindest and most gentle girl I've ever seen. It's not like what you guys are saying. The male student was a member of the fourth-year mage department. His strength was only ordinary. In the past, he was unlucky and met Xiuwu. He was taught a lesson by Xiuwu. Fortunately, senior sister Xia Mei passed by at that time and gave him medicine. She told Xiuwu not to find trouble with him. Although Xiuwu still came to find trouble with him from time to time and became more and more ruthless, every time senior sister Xia Mei heard the news, she would come to save him. Towards Xia Mei, the male student had always been grateful. Another guy who was mesmerized by beauty. The girls stared at the fourth-year junior brother with disdain. They had always disliked this kind of man who was mesmerized by Xia Mei. It's not like that. The youth told the story of how he met Xia Mei. He wanted to wash away Xia Mei's reputation that was slandered by these girls. So senior sister Xia Mei is a good person. She would come to save me every time. The youth told his story and then came to a conclusion with a serious face. That's right. Senior sister Xia Mei also helped me. If it wasn't for senior sister Xia Mei, I don't know how Xiuwu would deal with me. Me too. Me too. Several other boys who were saved came out to share their stories. This made the nearby boys who were listening to them exclaim that Xia Mei was really a gentle and kind girl. The male student who spoke up for Xia Mei looked at the girls, hoping that they would apologize. Who would have thought that each and every one of them would laugh uncontrollably? There's actually such a stupid idiot, I'm laughing so hard that tears are coming out of my eyes. Being sold off and still helping to count the money, this kind of person is talking about. I've really learned something new. The disdainful ridicule of the girls made the boys extremely angry. What do you mean by this? You girls are just jealous. Senior sister Xia Mei is such a good person. How can you have the heart to ruin her reputation? The boys who spoke up for Xia Mei were all very angry. Think about it carefully. Every time Xia Mei speaks up for you, the next time you meet Xiuwu, you'll be beaten up even more miserably. Every time she comes, you'll be miserable. A girl stopped laughing and casually said. The boys recalled, and it seemed to be true, that's just a coincidence. If Xiuwu wants to teach someone a lesson, senior sister Xia Mei can't stop him. A boy who was obviously a brainless fan of Xia Mei retorted. Well, I'll tell you one more thing. Although Xiuwu likes to bully people a bit, as long as you don't do anything to offend him, he won't always hold on to you and not let you go. You can ask the other people who were bullied by him. Will Xiuwu be the same as the few of you? Will he find trouble with them every day? The boys somewhat doubtfully turned their heads and looked around. There were indeed some victims who were also bullied. From those people, they knew that Xiuwu would only make things difficult for them when he met them. He wouldn't take the initiative to find trouble with them. Only those boys who were noticed by Sha Mei would become the target of Xiuwu's trouble. Hearing this answer, the boys' faces turned ugly. They didn't think that the senior sister they were so grateful to was actually the one who caused them to be targeted by Xiuwu. If she was really kind and wanted to help you, she wouldn't use this kind of method. How could she not know what kind of character Xiuwu is? Doesn't she know that the closer she is to you, the more you will be targeted by Xiuwu? She always knew that she just likes to see men fighting for her affection. She also likes to pretend to be a saint in front of outsiders who don't know the truth so that more brainless men will take a fancy to her. All of this is just a trick. You guys really think of her as a goddess. The girls coldly snorted and glanced at the stupefied men. They waved their sleeves and left the scene with glory, concealing their merits and reputation. To be able to let Sha Mei's fans wake up and see through her true colors, they could be considered to have done a good thing. Chapter 464. The meeting between Fenwu and Mo Gue allowed the Fenwu girl to finally end her days of eating dry rations. She could finally eat the grilled fish that she had been longing for. Mo Gue's cooking skills were pretty good. The grilled fish he made were delicious. Fenwu ate more than a dozen big and fragrant grilled fish and drank a few bowls of fish soup before she stopped eating. To be able to eat a hot meal in a world of ice and snow was already the best kind of enjoyment. Mo Gue's grilled fish skills were finally revealed. Fenwu grilled the fish while he grilled it himself. The two enjoyed a delicious meal together. The rest of the grilled fish was left to Mo Gue. After he finished grilling them, each of them put half of the fish into their respective spaces. Fenwu was very kind and gave half of the fish to Mo Gue. Mo Gue was originally embarrassed to ask for so much. The fish in the mountains were not easy to catch. He had tried catching fish himself, but the fish ran faster than rabbits. Often, before he could catch them, the fish had already disappeared. Seeing a pile of fish in Fenwu's tent, Mo Gue had been cursing in his heart for a long time. He didn't expect to get half of the fish just by doing a small favor. These fish were not a small number. Catching fish was much more difficult than cooking them. Mo Gue grilled the fish several times, but still felt embarrassed to ask for so much. He only kept a third of the fish as a reward for his hard work, and returned the other 2/3 to Fenwu. Fenwu looked at Mo Gue strangely, as if she didn't understand why he was returning the fish to her. However, Fenwu still put the fish away and didn't say anything. At night, it suddenly snowed heavily. Visibility was very low in the snow. The bonfire outside the tent was already blown over by the heavy snow. Fenwu and Mo Gue returned to their own tents to rest, preparing to set off at dawn the next day. They had already climbed half of the mountain. There was still half of the way to go before they could leap over it. The snow was really too heavy. They had to clear the snow from their tents every once in a while. If they didn't clear the snow, the tents might collapse under the weight of the snow. Not everyone could be so lucky to get a tent to shelter them from the wind and snow in the heavy snow. A girl was walking on the snowy ground on this windy and snowy night. She was frozen stiff, but she still couldn't find a place to hide from the wind and snow. She couldn't help but feel a little desperate. What should she do? She couldn't freeze to death here. It wasn't easy for her to come this far. No matter what, she couldn't be brushed off in this place. The girl cheered herself on, then gritted her teeth and continued to walk forward. As she walked, she saw a faint light in front of her. Someone was there. The girl seemed to have seen hope and quickly ran forward. Normally, she wouldn't rush to a place with people. Ever since she was robbed, the girl had some doubts about human nature. She didn't dare to trust her schoolmates or classmates easily. But now, it was different. If she couldn't find someone to save her, she would die. Once she died, she would immediately lose the qualification to compete. She didn't want to make herself like that. The girl rushed forward with all her might and finally rushed to the two tents. Mo Gui didn't expect to meet a contestant who came to ask for help. He was a little confused. If he remembered correctly, this wasn't a competition of unity and friendship. Everyone was an opponent. Asking for help from her opponent, there was nothing wrong with this girl's brain. But this girl looked pitiful. He should ask Fengwu if she was willing to take her in. If Fengwu wasn't willing, he could only chase her away. Fengwu was hiding in the tent to keep warm when she was unexpectedly called out by Mo Gui. Fengwu opened the tent and walked out. She saw a pitiful girl standing in the snow. This girl looked very pitiful. Her lips were purple from the cold. If she wasn't wearing clothes that kept her warm, she would have frozen to death in the snow and had no choice but to withdraw from the competition. "It's you." The girl was surprised. She had actually seen this girl who walked out of the tent before. When the trio tried to rob her, if it wasn't for this young girl who appeared and saved her, her things would have definitely been taken away. Fengwu was a little confused. Based on the girl's surprised tone, did they know each other? She searched her memories. She did look a little familiar. An image slowly surfaced in Fengwu's mind. She remembered where she'd seen this girl before. "You know Wu?" Mo Gui was surprised. If this girl was someone Fengwu knew, he would have taken her in for a night. "I don't know her. I've only seen her before," Fengwu said expressionlessly. The girl thought that Fengwu was angry that she'd led the trio over, causing her to almost be robbed. But wasn't she completely fine? After walking a distance, she was certain that she'd seen this girl ride off on her mount. The trio hadn't succeeded. Didn't know her, but had seen her before. Mo Gui wasn't stupid, and he soon figured it out. This girl must have met Fengwu once on the way here, but they hadn't talked to each other. Since they weren't close, should they still save her? Mo Gui left the decision to Fengwu and told her that this girl wanted to stay with them for a night. The girl's eyes were filled with anticipation. They were both girls. She would definitely agree, right? She would definitely agree. "No, this is a competition." Fengwu shook her head firmly. A juror had said that everyone was an opponent on the competition stage. She couldn't agree to help anyone who asked her. Fengwu had nodded. Everyone was an opponent on the competition stage. She wouldn't take the initiative to attack or help others. This was a rule that a juror had told Fengwu to follow. As an obedient girl, Fengwu naturally wouldn't agree to help this girl she'd only met once. "All right then, I understand." Although this girl was quite pitiful, this was a competition. Helping you was a favor, but not helping you was a duty. No one could say anything. He was just about to tell the girl to find another place to hide from the wind and snow when the girl glared at Fengwu with resentment, as if she'd done something unforgivable. Mo Gui, who'd originally felt a little sympathy for this girl, didn't have any more thoughts. Who did she think she was? How dare she glare at Fengwu like she was an enemy? She couldn't be reasoned with. How can you be like this? We're both girls. How can you bear to watch me freeze to death in the wind and snow? This competition is very important to me. I beg you, help me. I know you're still holding a grudge against me for attracting those 3 people, but that wasn't my fault. I'm also a victim. Aren't you completely fine? Why are you doing this to me? Chapter 465. The girl, who had been feeling a little guilty at first, felt more and more justified as she spoke. Nothing had happened to her, yet she was trying to take revenge on her. She was really petty and vicious. Leave. Xiao Wu already said that this is a competition. We have no obligation to help you. Mo Gui glanced at the girl, whose eyes were filled with hatred. It was better for people like her to leave as soon as possible. He didn't want Xiao Wu and him to be pestered by someone like her. The girl was chased away in the end. Before she left, her venomous eyes were like flying daggers, shooting at Fengwu. Unfortunately, Fengwu didn't feel anything. The girl was destined to be disappointed. The next day, Fengwu and Mo Gui packed their things and set off. Mo Gui used a piece of wood to make a small sled. As expected of a magical beast, little sister alpaca didn't have any trouble pulling the two of them. The two of them had just climbed onto the sled and let little sister alpaca pull it for less than a minute when they met someone. Fengwu and Mo Gui didn't expect that there would be someone camping so close to them. At this time, the people who lived here last night were also packing up their things. There was actually a mount parked next to the bonfire. This was a demon wolf. It was fast and had good stamina. There was also a snow sled tied to the back of the demon wolf. Xiao Wu, Mo Gui, so it's you. You're really lucky. Did you get a mount too? My magical wolf also came from a chest. I didn't expect there to be another mount in the chest. Zicheng greeted Fengwu with a smile. Zicheng was also puzzled. When she got the magical wolf, the system said that it was a unique mount. Why was there a second one? The magical wolf looked up at little sister alpaca. It was unlucky to be chosen by the Lord God to be this woman's mount. Why did you get in here? The magical wolf couldn't believe that there was a foolish magical beast who would jump into a trap. Little sister alpaca glanced at it coldly. I'm helping a friend. I did it willingly. I'm different from you, who was forced to be ridden. What's the difference? In the end, they were all used as mounts. Demon Wolf felt that he couldn't understand what this cute alpaca was thinking. I didn't expect the place where we set up camp last night to be so close. You guys are really amazing. You're so fast. Mo Gui could tell that Zicheng wanted to ask about little sister alpaca. How could he let her have her way? He casually found a topic to chat with Zicheng. How could that be? It's all thanks to our mounts. Otherwise, we would still be circling around the foot of the mountain. Zicheng could tell that Mo Gui didn't want to talk about it, so he didn't ask any more questions and changed the topic. While the two of them were talking, a woman came out of the tent. The person who came out with her was Eve. Why are you two here? The woman glared at Fengwu and Yi Zichen hatefully, as if she was looking at her father's murderer. Wan, what's wrong with you? Do you know them? Eve asked curiously. She had a rough guess. The girl named Wan nodded fiercely. They were the ones who refused to help me yesterday and chased me away in the snowy night. If I hadn't met you two, I probably would have frozen to death and been sent out of the competition. Thinking of how he had been ruthlessly chased away last night, Jun hated Fengwu even more for not helping him and Mo Gui for helping the tyrant. So you're talking about them. As soon as Eve heard the news, she looked at Zhu En in a much friendlier way. To her, anyone who hated Fengwu was her friend. That's where you're wrong, Fengwu. Do you still have any love for your classmates? Senior Wan is a third-year senior. How dare you chase her away? You're being disrespectful to your seniors. Eve couldn't wait to find trouble with Fengwu. Are you crazy? Why are you talking about this in a competition? If we do as you say, we don't need to compete. We can just let the 7th-year seniors win. In any case, as juniors, we can't be disrespectful to our seniors. If we accidentally win, wouldn't our seniors be unhappy? Mo Gui didn't care if his words would offend the seniors and directly threw them at Eve's face. He'd been unhappy with this Eve for a long time. What do you mean? When did I say that? Eve glared hatefully at Mo Gui. Fengwu, do you always have to find a man to protect you? Can't you solve your problems yourself? In the past, it was a juror who circled around you all day. Now there's this Mo Gue who flirts around all day. No wonder you're a mother at such a young age. Eve said viciously. This girl is so vicious. Her words are so unpleasant. A boy deeply felt that one couldn't judge a book by its cover. Eve still didn't know that her every word and expression had been transmitted to the screen, and it was a 360-degree transmission without any blind spots. That's right. Someone agreed. That Fenwu is too cruel. She threw June, a girl, into the snow. If it wasn't for someone taking her in, she would have lost the competition long ago. A girl pitied June, who had been chased away. Are you a saint? That's a competition. Who would save their opponent in the middle of a competition? Fenwu is right. A competition is a competition. She saved you out of kindness, but not out of duty. Why must she save you? A more rational person said. Most people agreed with this statement, but there was still a small group of people who felt that Fenwu didn't love her classmates. Even if it was a competition, she shouldn't have rejected a senior. That was too heartless and cold-blooded. However, there weren't many people who supported this statement. There weren't many saints in the school. You're jealous of me. Fenwu looked at Eve and said with a serious face. Master said that people who talked bad about her were all people who were jealous of her. There was no need to pay attention to these kinds of people. People who only knew how to be jealous would never amount to anything. She couldn't learn from them. I'm jealous of you. You must be dreaming. Eve was like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. She was about to explode. You're a slut who seduces men and has a child out of wedlock. I'm jealous of you. Eve was beside herself with rage. Master said that people who only know how to be jealous will never amount to anything. I suggest that you clear your mind. If you continue like this, your strength will never reach the highest level. Fenwu girl said with good intentions. You. Eve was about to go crazy. She suspected that Fenwu was here to anger her. She must have said that on purpose to anger her to death. That's enough, Eve. Zicheng stopped Eve from being led astray by Fenwu. Xiao Wu, I'm sorry. Eve didn't mean any harm. Please don't take it to heart. However, what you did yesterday was wrong. No matter what, I hope that you can apologize to Senior June. Chapter 466. Even though we're in a competition, Senior Zhuan is still a senior. Just apologize and we'll let this matter go. What do you think? Zicheng had a kind look on his face as he wanted both parties to reconcile. She felt that her suggestion was pretty good. Not only would she be able to gain Zhuan's favor, but she could also reconcile Fenwu and Zhuan. Even if they left the competition dungeon, Zhuan wouldn't hold a grudge against them. This was good for everyone, wasn't it? All Fenwu had to do was apologize. She wouldn't lose anything. She felt that her suggestion was very good. Both sides wouldn't lose anything. They could even put aside their grudges. This was something that couldn't be done without harm. Who would have thought that Fenwu would refuse? I didn't do anything wrong. I won't apologize. Everyone in the competition is an opponent. No one is special. Fenwu blinked and said honestly. That's right. Xiao Wu, I support you. Mo Gue didn't want Fenwu to be bullied by Zhuan. She clearly didn't do anything wrong. Why should she apologize? Duo, let's go. Fenwu didn't want to pay attention to the person who wanted her to apologize. She called Duo, and little alpaca pulled the sled and quickly ran away. Zicheng watched in shock as Fenwu and Mo Gue left. They actually left just like that. Zicheng hadn't been treated like this in a long time. He couldn't believe it. This was clearly a good suggestion for everyone. Why did she reject it? Could it be that she really didn't care about offending a third-year senior? Did Fengwu care? This girl really didn't care about these things. To Fengwu girl, where the line of not offending others was, Fengwu girl would probably never understand. Little Cheng, look at her. She didn't give us any face at all. Eve made a mental note to Fengwu. One day, she would make Fengwu pay her back with interest. Zhu En looked at Fengwu's back with a gloomy face. How dare a second-year student not put her in her eyes? Who did she think she was? How dare she not give her face? When the competition was over, she would let Fengwu know what the consequences of offending her senior were. Zicheng also felt uncomfortable, but she still comforted Zhu En with a few words, telling her not to take it to heart. Fengwu was such a heartless person, she didn't have any good intentions. As for whether Zhu En took it to heart, she didn't care. It was Fengwu who chose to offend Zhu En. As Fengwu's classmate, she had tried her best to persuade her. Whether Zhu En wanted to take revenge on Fengwu or not was not something she could control. Fengwu and Mo Gui ran to the front and sat down to eat the grilled fish and drink the fresh fish soup. They completely forgot about Zhu En and the others. To Fengwu, Zhu En was no different from an unimportant passerby. She rarely remembered unimportant people. Xiao Wu, we should be able to enter the desert after today. However, there's a lack of water and food in the desert. Before we enter, we should prepare more food and water, Mo Gui said after some thought. He didn't think it was a big deal to enter the desert a day later. The real difficulty was the checkpoint at the end. The Snow Mountain checkpoint was actually to prepare them to enter the desert. Catch fish. Fengwu said with sparkling eyes. This girl had fallen in love with grilled fish since yesterday. Alright, Mo Gui agreed without hesitation. After confirming their goal, Fengwu asked Little Sister Alpaca to help them find a frozen lake. Although Little Sister Alpaca hadn't been here for long, she had already explored the Snow Mountain. Under Little Sister Alpaca's lead, they successfully found a frozen lake. The lake wasn't big. Fengwu and Mo Gui spent some time breaking the ice and catching a lot of fish. After filling their water bags with fish, they filled up their bags with water. Finally, they began to grill the fish by the lake. When all the fish were grilled and placed in the space, more than half the day had passed. Collecting food didn't take much time. Most of the time was spent grilling the fish. There were too many fish, but only Mo Gui could do it. Fengwu couldn't do it. By the time all the fish were grilled, it was already afternoon. After packing the food, the two got on the sled. Little Sister Alpaca carried them down the mountain. From this position, they could already see a vast and boundless desert. The bottom of the snowy mountain was directly connected to the desert. As expected of a competition dungeon, even such an unscientific phenomenon had appeared. There was not even a hint of excess. It seemed that they would have to stay on the snow mountain for the night. The two decided to enter the desert tomorrow. While Fengwu and Mo Gui were looking for food, Zicheng had already led June and the others for a long time. June didn't want to follow Zicheng all the time, so they agreed to go their separate ways when they reached the foot of the mountain. Zicheng didn't object. She wasn't familiar with June, so it was safer to travel with someone she knew. She was afraid of being stabbed if she didn't know June well. On the other hand, Eve was quite reluctant to part with June. Along the way, Eve and June had talked a lot about Fengwu. Their relationship had improved by leaps and bounds. The enemy of my enemy can really become my friend. This sentence made sense. Other than Zicheng, many others had caught up and entered the desert before Fengwu and the others. Even Ming Shi and Skycliff entered the desert together, missing Fengwu just like that. Ruglas, Ajur, Gross, and Elena were almost at the foot of the mountain. Fengwu had fallen from the vanguard to a position a little behind. Fengwu didn't know any of this. Since they had already made up their minds to enter the desert tomorrow, Fengwu and Mo Gui weren't in a hurry. It was easy to get lost in the desert. Those who entered first might not be the first to leave. Many people knew this, but there were still many who wanted to take advantage of this opportunity. As more and more contestants poured into the desert, fewer and fewer people remained on the snow mountain. After spending the night on the snow mountain, Fenwu and Mo Gui entered the desert with Alpaca at dawn the next day. As soon as they entered the desert, the clothes and shoes they were wearing couldn't be worn anymore. The two immediately put away their thick clothes and changed out of their shoes. Alpaca's sled couldn't be used. In the end, Fenwu rode on Alpaca while Mo Gui pulled her forward. The task of looking at the map was handed over to Mo Gui. The map was large and complicated, and there couldn't be any mistakes in the desert map. If they went wrong, it would be difficult to get out. Mo Gui also felt that it was better to do this work himself. If he handed it over to Fenwu, he was afraid he would be led into a ditch. Mo Gui wasn't Fenwu. He quickly analyzed the most time-saving route they could take. The two people and one alpaca set off into the depths of the desert. Chapter 467. The scorching sun was so hot that it hurt all over their bodies. When they touched their skin, they could feel a tingling sensation. Mo Gui and Fenwu walked slowly through the desert under the scorching sun. This desert was simply too big. They walked for a long time, but they didn't see a single water source, nor did they see a place to rest. In the end, Mo Gui made a shelf out of a cloak he had gotten before. The two sat under the shelf to block out the scorching sun. The sun is too strong. The two sat down to drink water and rest to recover their strength. Mo Gui wiped the sweat off his forehead and looked up at the scorching sun in the sky. Most of the things they got from the snow mountains were winter clothes and furs. Those clothes were too thick. Walking in the desert with such thick clothes was like getting heatstroke at any moment. But if they didn't use those clothes to cover their exposed skin, they would have to worry about getting sunburned. His and Fenwu's arms were already covered in blisters. If they continued like this, how were they going to get out of the desert? It hurts. Fenwu wet a handkerchief and covered her face with it. The stinging sensation immediately subsided. Find some clothes to cover your body. I don't believe we'll get sunburned. Mo Gui said, unwilling to give up. Originally, a small sunburn wouldn't be a problem for them. Unfortunately, they had lost their abilities and were now ordinary people. With the sun shining on their faces, it was hot and uncomfortable. Our clothes are too thick. They didn't have many summer clothes. All they had was winter clothes. It's fine. I got 2 cotton-padded clothes from the box. Let's take them off and use them as summer clothes. In any case, they just wanted to block out the sun. It didn't matter if they looked good or not. The two of them took off a thick and heavy cotton-padded jacket each. They removed all the cotton used to keep the jacket warm, leaving only the outer fabric. Although it was thicker than ordinary summer clothes, it was much better than just wearing a cotton-padded jacket. The two of them used the clothes they got from the laundry to cover themselves from head to toe. Mo Gui also used medicine to check the wounds on their hands and faces. Mo Gui's luck was pretty good. He had opened a few boxes of useful items. Clothes, shoes, hats, medicine, and the like, and he hadn't encountered a single trap box. His luck was pretty good. Even Fenwu's luck was not as good as his, which was why the two of them could still use the medicine. After wrapping his head and body with clothes, he didn't feel so uncomfortable. Little sister Alpaca was fine. As expected of a magical beast, she was born with thick skin and flesh. Even in the desert, she didn't suffer much. The weather was truly too hot, but Mo Gui told them to save water. The desert was so vast, who knew when they'd be able to replenish their water pouches? If they didn't plan on drinking water, he was afraid they'd die of thirst and withdraw from the competition. At that time, he would be laughed to death by a juror. That kind of situation could never happen to him. Absolutely not, absolutely not. Thinking of this, Mo Gui's plan for drinking water became even stricter. All of this was so that the two of them wouldn't have to worry about dying of thirst in the desert. As night fell, the temperature in the desert began to suddenly drop. During the day, the temperature had clearly risen to 40 to 50 degrees, but at night, the temperature dropped to -10 degrees. Fortunately, they hadn't thrown away their winter clothes, which could be put to good use. The threat from the night was not only because of the sudden drop in temperature, but also because a type of magic beast that lived at night had come out to roam about. Listening to the scalp-numbing howls of the wolves in the desert made people's hearts tremble. Right now, their physiques were only slightly better than that of ordinary people. In the desert at night, there were actually magical beasts running amok. How could these bitter little contestants survive? When the contestants discovered that there were magical beasts appearing at night, they secretly cursed the school teachers in their hearts. What was this? Did they have to make it so difficult? Those who had originally planned to travel at night and rest during the day had no choice but to give up on that idea. It was so dangerous at night. Only someone with a screw loose would want to travel at night. On the first night, Fengwu and Mo Gui found a pile of rocks and rested for the night. They didn't even dare to take out their tents. Each of them wrapped themselves in an animal skin cloak and took turns patrolling. Although the howls of the wolves could be heard from time to time in the distance, they safely passed the first night. The next day, Fengwu and Mo Gui wrapped themselves in clothes and continued on their way. The temperature rose again, and the high temperature made them feel like they were about to be roasted. On such a hot day, whether it was dry rations or grilled fish, they didn't have much of an appetite. But they had to eat. If they didn't eat, they wouldn't have the strength to walk out of the desert. In the end, Fengwu and Mo Gui only ate a little, took a short nap, and continued on their way. Nighttime was too dangerous, so they could only travel during the day. No matter how hot the sun was during the day, they had to hurry. After traveling for another 2 hours, Fengwu and Mo Gui actually saw the first group of contestants. It was a group of 5. These 5 people clearly knew each other, otherwise they wouldn't have been so confident in forming an alliance in the individual competition. The 5 of them were in a sorry state. Each of them had a winter coat over their heads to block the sun. Even though they were sweating profusely, they didn't have the slightest intention of taking off their coats to cool off. The 5 of them were surprised to see Fengwu and Mo Gui, but after a brief moment of surprise, they returned to normal. One of the 2 girls in the group was very interested in the little alpaca that Fengwu was riding. From the moment they met, her gaze hadn't left the little alpaca. Everyone was walking the same path. Although they had bumped into each other, they didn't interfere with each other's business. Each team walked on one side, and neither side interacted with each other. Seeing that they weren't looking for trouble, Mo Gui and Fengwu naturally wouldn't take the initiative to find trouble with them. They just silently hurried on without any interaction. However, the girl who was interested in the little alpaca suddenly pulled the tall man beside her aside and said something. The man muttered to himself for a moment before nodding and walking in front of Fengwu and Mo Gui. "Can you lend us your mount? My little sister can't walk anymore and wants to borrow your mount. Once she's rested, she'll immediately return it to you." The man looked a bit serious, but his aura was very imposing. With one look, one could tell that he wasn't an unknown person at school. "If your little sister is tired, you can just find a place to rest. Our duo won't lend it to you." Mo Gui knew that Fengwu loved her new friend, duo, very much. How could she agree to lend duo to others? Chapter 468. Besides, with duo's temperament, it would be strange if she agreed. Other than Fengwu, no one else could ride on this bad-tempered little magical beast. "You two, we're all classmates. Our boss's sister is only borrowing your mount. It's not like she won't return it. Why are you so stingy?" the other 2 men called out. These two were obviously the tall and strong boy's subordinates. Naturally, they were on the boss's side. Duo isn't a mount. She's my friend. Duo won't lend it to me, Fengwu said seriously as she looked at the man. It's clearly an alpaca. What friend? If you don't want to lend it to me, just say so. There's no need to find such an excuse, the boss's sister said with a strange tone. Fengwu didn't like her tone. She felt a little annoyed, so she turned her head and didn't look at her. Seeing that Fengwu didn't answer, she couldn't find trouble even if she wanted to. She snorted angrily, but didn't stubbornly run to Fengwu to court death. Both of you, if you're willing to lend this alpaca today, I'll owe you a favor after the competition. If you have any difficulties in the future, you can come to me for help. The boss was quite reasonable. He didn't start a fight without a word. A favor. Mo Huai really didn't expect that the 4th grade 7th seat would offer such a condition. This man was quite famous in school. He was the 4th grade 7th seat. His swordsmanship was very powerful. There were only a few 4th grade students who could beat him. It was said that he was born in a big family and received a good education from a young age. There was a big difference between him and those aristocrats who used their power to bully others. There was almost no negative news about him in school. He was famous for being a good person and was very popular in school. There were many people who wanted to follow him in school. It was no wonder that 2 of his followers called him boss. Fengwu didn't know much about the boss in front of her. Among the famous people in school, she only knew Ming Shi. Even if the other famous people were standing in front of her, she wouldn't recognize them. Although he was a little surprised, Mo Huai firmly rejected the offer. This favor was very tempting to others. With the protection of a senior student in the 10th seat, their days would be much better, and they would not have to worry about being bullied. However, Fengwu didn't need this kind of benefit. He knew that Senior Ming Shi had always taken care of Fengwu. Senior Ming Shi had already been promoted for 6 years and was now the 6th year's chief. He was definitely a figure standing at the top of the pyramid in the school. With Senior Ming Shi's care, Fengwu naturally didn't need a favor from a 4th year's 10th seat student. Although Algernon was surprised to hear that he was rejected again, he didn't intend to cause trouble for the other party. As a 4th year's 10th seat student, he still had this kind of magnanimity. Moreover, with his status, he wouldn't want to rob the things of 2 seniors. Algernon's sister, Pamela, was a little unhappy. She still wanted to say something, but when she met her brother's gaze, she didn't say anything. Although she was usually a little unruly and willful, she still knew the severity of the situation. Her brother had already told her that their performance in the competition would be broadcasted live. No matter how bad her temper was, she couldn't vent it in front of the whole school. If she really dared to do so, her brother would definitely not forgive her. Their family had a lot of children. If it wasn't for her good talent and her brother being a 10th seat student, she wouldn't have been valued by the family. She didn't dare to make her brother angry. Although her brother had always been gentle and polite in front of outsiders, he had always been courteous and respectful. If her brother was really angered, it wouldn't be a joke. Thinking of the consequences of her brother's anger, Pamela could only obediently shut her mouth. However, her gaze towards Fengwu clearly showed that she hadn't given up. When Fengwu wasn't paying attention, the only girl standing there who hadn't said anything looked at Fengwu. She opened her mouth to say something, but in the end, she closed her mouth. They weren't familiar with each other to begin with, and Pamela was eyeing her mount, so it was better not to greet her. After rushing for a day, the 2 teams coincidentally found a place to rest before the sun went down. This time, they weren't very lucky. There wasn't a ready-made place for them to rest, and there wasn't enough time for them to continue, so they could only set up tents on both sides. Fengwu and Mo Gue only set up 1 tent, and the 2 of them took turns to keep watch. The alpaca sister carried Fengwu for a day. Fengwu let it rest well and didn't let Duo join in the night watch, although Duo wanted to help. "Marissa, what are you making? It tastes so bad. Don't you have anything better?" Pamela spat out the dry and hard bread in her mouth and drank half a bag of water to get rid of the dryness in her mouth. "I'm sorry, Pamela. I got this bread when I opened a box. Although it doesn't taste very good, it's very good." Marissa was probably used to Pamela's temper and said with an apologetic expression, "You should keep this disgusting thing for yourself." Pamela threw the black bread at Marissa's face in disgust, then took out some jerky from her dimensional space and ate it with relish. "I'm sorry, Pamela is still young. She's been spoiled since she was young. Please don't take it to heart," Algernon said apologetically. Marissa clenched her fists without leaving a trace, then loosened them as if nothing had happened. "It's fine. She's just impatient. I don't mind." After Marissa left the tent, Pamela reluctantly put the jerky into her dimensional space. "Brother, she's so poor. Why are you being so nice to her? Is she worthy of your apology?" Pamela didn't hide her disdain for Marissa. Marissa was a second-year swordsman student. Her grades were not bad, but her background was too low. She had always been an inconspicuous person in their dorm. Of the 4 people in their dorm, the other 2 girls were in the same class and had known each other since they were young. As soon as they entered the dorm, they banded together and tried to suppress Pamela and Marissa, wanting to take control of the dorm. How could Pamela let them succeed? She could only unwillingly team up with the powerless Marissa to resist the 2 girls. Only then did the dorm not become the 2 girls' world. If it wasn't for the fact that Marissa was still useful, why would she, a noble lady, be friends with a commoner? "I told you a long time ago not to underestimate anyone. Although Marissa's background is a bit low, she's easy to control. Who knows, we might have a use for her in the future." Algernon smiled faintly, his gaze deep and distant. Chapter 469. If it wasn't for the fact that Melissa was still useful, why would a noble lady befriend a commoner? "I told you a long time ago not to underestimate anyone. Although this Marissa's background is a bit low, she's easy to control. Who knows, we might have a use for her in the future." Algernon faintly smiled, his gaze deep and distant. "What can a commoner like her do to us?" Pamela said without a care. "Who knows? Maybe that day will come. Even if that day doesn't come, we won't lose anything." Algernon didn't care about a commoner. The brother and sister only knew that the conversation and images in the tent would not be leaked out, so they were at ease and dared to say these words here. However, they did not expect that accidents would happen. Unbeknownst to the Algernon siblings, a small sapphire earring was hidden under the quilt without attracting anyone's attention. Outside the tent, Melissa, with her other earring in her ear, seemed to be talking casually with one of Algernon's men. The 2 boys didn't realize that the quiet and shy girl in front of them was actually multitasking. She was eavesdropping on the siblings' conversation while dealing with the 2 men. The blue earrings weren't normal, but a pair of alchemy items that could be used for long-distance training. Melissa didn't get this pair of earrings from a chest, but instead chose it during the team competition. At that time, she also thought that the earrings might be useful in the first team competition. Unfortunately, in the first team competition, she was unlucky and encountered a very weak team, so the earrings didn't have much of a chance to be used. But in the individual competition, the earrings showed their usefulness. Melissa came from a poor family. She was only the daughter of a hunter. This kind of background couldn't be any lower than that of a Notre Dame du Starlight. She was probably only a little better than an orphan. During the dorm allocation, she was assigned to the same dorm as 3 other noble ladies. The 3 noble ladies didn't want to submit to each other and wanted to be the boss of the dorm. The first 2 to join forces were the other 2 girls. They knew each other since they were young and were students of the same department, so their backgrounds were similar. Panmilla had no choice but to pull in a commoner like herself to deal with the other two. Melissa knew that it was impossible for her to stay out of this, so she agreed. From then on, Panmilla treated her like a servant, always showing off her superiority in front of her. Panmilla's pitiful face was disgusting. She seemed to have forgotten that she, Melissa, had never taken the initiative to rely on her. It was Panmilla who had sought her out to form an alliance. Although Panmilla wasn't a good person and was unruly and willful, she was still quite generous. Following Panmilla around, she would occasionally get some things that Panmilla would let slip through her fingers. In addition, with Panmilla as her backer, her days were much better. After following Panmilla, she got to know Panmilla's brother. He was a man who always had a kind face and was polite to everyone. She knew that this man was not as gentle and considerate as he appeared to be. This man was much scarier than the brainless Panmilla. She was afraid of this man and was worried that one day she would be schemed against by this brother and sister pair. This was because the people Algernon interacted with were all useful people and she didn't want to become a pawn in their hands. Knowing their plans, Melissa let out a sigh of relief. She didn't want to offend this brother and sister pair, nor did she want to become a pawn in their hands. As a commoner, she had always been good at patience. She would think of a way to break free from this brother and sister pair. Although it would take a long time, she was willing to wait. In the middle of the night, Fenwu suddenly woke up from her dream. The wind carried a trace of blood and killing intent. Something was wrong. She threw off the blanket and put on her clothes before quickly running out of the tent. Mo Gue was holding his sword and keeping watch. She ran in front of Mo Gue. "Something's coming," Fenwu said. "How far?" Mo Gue's face darkened. He didn't doubt Fenwu's words. He believed that this mysterious girl wouldn't make a mistake. "Not far," Fenwu said expressionlessly. "Pack up and leave." Mo Gue made a prompt decision. The two put away their tent. Before leaving, they notified Algernon's men. No matter what, there wasn't any conflict between them and Ren Ai, so notifying them could be considered a show of respect for being from the same school. Mo Gue's good intentions didn't necessarily lead to a good outcome. After hearing Mo Gue's words, Algernon's two subordinates didn't think much of it, but they still went to inform their boss. After hearing this, Algernon pondered for a moment. He wasn't sure if he should listen to Mo Gue. They were rivals, so Mo Gue had no reason to inform them of this. Could it be that he had set up a trap to attack the five of them? Mo Gue. You're thinking too much. The smarter a person was, the more they thought and the more powerful their imaginations were. There were too many things to consider, so he couldn't make up his mind. On the other hand, Pamela didn't think much of it. "Brother, do you really believe what that guy said? He's just a second year. What could he possibly know? I think he said that to trick us. Brother, be careful of traps." Pamela didn't really think that much, but because Fenwu and Mo Gue hadn't given her any face during the day, she had been guessing their thoughts in the direction of evil. While Algernon was still hesitating, Fenwu and Mo Gue had already jumped onto Little Alpaca's back and were running quickly through the desert. This was the first time a Jur had ridden on Little Alpaca's back. Little Alpaca didn't have a good impression of males. It was a cute little girl, so how could it let a man ride it? However, this was a crucial moment for them to escape. Without Little Alpaca's help, it wouldn't be easy for them to escape. A large pack of wolves was approaching from all directions. They were constantly moving toward the place where they had set up camp. The bloody murderous aura that Fenwu had smelled earlier came from those guys. If not for the fact that Fenwu had grown up in the mountains, she wouldn't have been able to smell anything different in the air. Little Alpaca also realized that something wasn't right. Only then did it agree to bring along this useless male along. It even made an exception and allowed Mo Gue and Fenwu to ride on its back to escape for their lives. Funwu and Mo Gui rode away on their alpacas. Algernon wasn't so lucky. When they saw a large pack of wolves surrounding them, Pamela was scared out of her wits. Chapter 470. The brother and sister duo regretted not listening to Mo Gui's warning and leaving quickly. Fortunately, although they didn't leave this place, they were still afraid that something would happen and had been on guard all along. That was why they had immediately discovered the wolf pack when it had surrounded them. The demonic wolves around them were all rank 1 demonic beasts. These rank 1 demonic beasts were nothing to Algernon and the others. They were just the lowest level of demonic beasts, and they could kill many with a single slash. But now, they were all ordinary people. Their constitution and element were better than ordinary people, so they had no advantage against these demonic beasts. The wolves surrounded them. Night was a magical beast's paradise. They would appear from time to kill the contestants, increasing the difficulty of the competition and bringing disaster to the contestants. Huff huff, huff. Marisa held her sword and ran wildly. Just now, she had led Pan Milla to escape, but Pan Milla had pushed her into the pack of wolves in order to save her own life. If it weren't for the fact that the wolves seemed to be more interested in Pan Milla, she wouldn't have survived and would have been immediately sent out of the competition grounds. Pan Milla was bitten to death by the wolves before she could run more than a few steps. She used the knockout powder she chose during the first round of the competition to knock out the wolves that attacked her and immediately ran in another direction. She didn't dare to stop. If not for the knockout powder in her hand, she would have been bitten to death by the wolves long ago. Yes, Pan Milla died. She didn't feel anything special in her heart, only a slight sigh of relief. She had long wanted to get rid of the siblings, but with her weak strength, it was easier said than done to get rid of Pan Milla, who had the backing of one of the top 10 powerhouses. This time, Pan Milla's selfish decision to push her into the wolf pack gave her an honorable reason to leave. Therefore, being pushed into the wolf pack wasn't a bad thing. To her, it was an opportunity. She lived well and didn't suffer any losses. She didn't know how long she ran. Finally, when the first ray of sunlight fell, she knew that she had succeeded. She had survived. She wanted to find a place to rest. Not far away, there was a messy stone forest. She gritted her teeth and walked in. Funwu and Mo Gui, with the help of little sister Alpaca, successfully escaped the wolves' pursuit. At this moment, the two were hiding under a large stone to rest. Unexpectedly, not long after the two of them fell asleep, someone came. The newcomer was Marisa. She had not expected to bump into Funwu and Zhao Fei again. Funwu. Marisa looked at Funwu and then at Funwu. She wasn't sure if Funwu still recognized her. She had been in the same team as her during the entrance exam. Ever since she entered the school, she had heard many rumors about Funwu. Most of these rumors were negative, and she could not imagine what she would do if it happened to her. However, Funwu did not seem to be affected at all. She would often be surrounded by 1 or 2 friends as she walked around the school grounds. Even when faced with the criticism of others, she was calm and unafraid, which made Melissa admire her very much. If only she was so strong, that would be good, she often thought regretfully. She did not want to talk to Funwu, nor did she want to talk to her because they had been in the same team. They were not familiar with each other in the first place, so there was no need for her to go up to her. She had thought that she would not have any more interactions with Funwu, but unexpectedly, they met again. Funwu did not seem to remember her. She felt a little disappointed, but she also felt that it was natural. It had been more than a year, so it was normal for her to forget. Even though she knew, she still felt a trace of regret. Marisa? Funwu asked uncertainly. When she first saw Marisa yesterday, she felt that she was familiar. After a night, she finally remembered. The person she met was one of the people she had been in the same team with when she first entered the virtual dimension. Even though they had been in the same team, Fengwu was not sure if it was the Marissa in her memory because they had not seen each other for a long time. In Fengwu's memory, Mei Lisha was a girl who had low self-esteem and was a little restrained. However, the person standing in front of her now no longer had that self-abased and restrained look. Although she didn't become confident and arrogant, her temperament had changed to a certain extent. This was why Fengwu couldn't be sure if it was her. "You still remember me?" Marissa widened her eyes in surprise. "Yes, I remember. We were in the same team," Fengwu nodded affirmatively. Her question meant that she admitted that she was Marissa. "You're injured." Mo Gue was not as cautious when he saw that she was not an enemy, but he did not let his guard down. He noticed the wound on Marissa's arm. There was a row of teeth marks. It was obvious that she had been injured by a fierce beast. It reminded him of the pack of wolves that had tried to kill them last night. "It's nothing, just a superficial wound." Marissa was not a delicate girl, so she did not care about a wound like this that was not fatal. She found a place to sit down and took out the medicine she needed from her dimensional storage. She dipped a handkerchief in water, cleaned the wound, and poured the powder into it. Marissa's forehead was covered in cold sweat, but she did not make a sound. Mo Gue had a good impression of her because of this rare display of strength in a woman. Marissa had escaped death, but Pan Milla was standing outside in a daze. She could not believe that she had failed. She had actually died. She left the resurrection area in low spirits. However, she noticed that the people around her were looking at her strangely. So it's her. She deserved it. She actually pushed her companion into a pack of wolves. This kind of person is too evil. Good thing she didn't pass the competition. The heavens must be watching her lose. Isn't that right? She's Algernon's little sister. I don't understand how a good person like Algernon could have such a selfish and evil little sister. If she was my little sister, I would have cut off all ties with her immediately. I don't want to be screwed over by my own sister. So she's Pan Milla. I never would have thought that there would be such a black sheep in our noble family, she's always so arrogant. I thought she had some kind of ability. I didn't expect her to be this kind of trash. When I get married in the future, I'll definitely tell my family that I can't have a woman like Pan Milla. I don't want a wife with such evil thoughts. The students of the same school were pointing and whispering, causing Pamela's face to turn as white as a sheet of paper. She remembered that the scene of the competition was to be transmitted to the holographic screen, but she had actually forgotten about it. Chapter 471. As the older brother, Algernon had no idea what had happened to Pamela because he had been lucky enough to escape. However, his two subordinates were not as lucky and had both died under the wolf's claws. None of this had anything to do with Fengwu and the others. After a sleepless night, Fengwu and the other two slept in the stone forest. Although the heat during the day made them feel stuffy and uncomfortable, in terms of safety, it was actually safer during the day than at night. Melissa applied some medicine to her wounds and rested enough. She looked much more spirited. After chatting with Melissa, Mo Gue found out that she had the ability to identify herbs and concoct medicine. Many of the herbs on Melissa's body were made by her. In fact, Melissa was definitely a genius in concocting medicine. However, her family's financial situation was not good. Learning to concoct medicine required a large amount of money, and alchemists needed a lot of money in the early stages. Melissa was only the daughter of a small hunter family. Even her school fees had been saved for more than 10 years. How could she have the money to study alchemy? Melissa was also really talented. She had learned a few simple prescriptions as a hunter's daughter and improved a few good ones. After coming to Notre Dame du Starlight, she chose to study alchemy as an elective. In terms of concocting medicine, Melissa had worked hard and was better than most of her peers. This was because she had spent most of her time practicing swordsmanship. If she had entered the alchemy department from the beginning, it would have produced another dazzling genius. Because of Melissa's ability to concoct medicine, Mo Gui did not object to her joining. After all, Melissa was someone Fengwu knew, so there was nothing wrong with her joining. However, the main reason he allowed Melissa to join was because he knew that with Melissa's strength, she would not be able to do anything to him and Fengwu. With Marissa's help, many things became a lot more convenient. Marissa also knew why Mo Gui had agreed to let her join, so along the way, she would collect all the useful herbs she saw. When night fell, she would use those herbs to refine medicinal powder. The reason why she didn't refine the potions was because she didn't have the specialized equipment required for refining potions. This set of equipment was something she had chosen during her first group mission. She was still young, so she didn't want to be a burden and be despised. She had to show her value. Unfortunately, they didn't even have the chance to use these things before their team was completely wiped out. The members of the Phoenix Dance Alliance had grown to 3, but their speed was definitely not fast. From the light screen outside, it could be seen that Fengwu and the others were already lagging behind for a while. They were already quite a distance away from the vanguard. The peaceful journey had only lasted for 3 days. These contestants didn't know that they were about to face a new challenge, one that would eliminate most of them. Vice Principal, may I ask if there is any special meaning to this vote? Sandstorm mode, battle mode, and quicksand trap mode. What are the differences between these 3 modes? Why are the students allowed to choose one of these 3 modes? Tamancha turned to look at the vice principal. At the same time, in the spacious plaza, besides the teachers and students who were working, 3 options had appeared beside everyone. These 3 options were sandstorm mode, battle mode, and quicksand trap mode. These 3 modes had suddenly appeared in front of the students, but most of them were still confused. This was why Tamancha had asked this question. The vice principal coughed reservedly, then smiled amiably. Unfortunately, his white beard made it impossible to tell whether he was amiable or not. These 3 modes are the tests they will encounter in the second desert stage. Every time they enter a new map, there will be a new test waiting for them. The difficulty will only increase. Then, do they have to go through all 3 modes? They can only choose one mode. Those who can't pass will be eliminated immediately. The other 2 modes that are not chosen will not appear in future competitions. The vice principal shook his head, his aged voice carrying a hint of joy. So, vice principal, you're looking forward to the next contestant's misfortune? Everyone was speechless. However, when they thought about how they could personally choose the mode that the contestants were going to experience, they felt very excited. Next, Tamancha asked the vice principal to introduce the 3 modes. Unfortunately, the vice principal was very tight-lipped this time and refused to say anything. He only asked everyone to choose based on their feelings. The difficulty of these 3 modes was different. Even the simplest mode was not easy. Therefore, no matter which mode they chose, the contestants would face a huge challenge. Alright, the final choices of the students have been made. Let's see which mode the contestants will enter. Tamancha opened the paper that recorded the final choices. Battle mode. 40% of the students have chosen this mode. Therefore, the next mode that the contestants will experience is the battle mode, Tamancha said excitedly on the stage. The audience below the stage was somewhat confused. Bro, what did you choose? Someone started chatting below the stage. Of course, it's the quicksand trap. I chose the battle mode. I feel that the difficulty is very high just from the name. Me too. I chose the sandstorm mode. I felt that I didn't understand the other 2, so I chose the only mode that I could understand. The contestants in the venue were naturally unaware of the huge commotion outside the stage. It was currently night in the competition venue. The desert at night was the most dangerous. Not only did the temperature drop, but all kinds of magical beasts would also come out to wander. If one was not careful, they would be bitten to death. After a few days of recuperation, Marissa's wounds were completely healed. Fortunately, this was the virtual world, so any injury would heal very quickly. In fact, after applying medicine, Marissa's wounds were completely healed in just a day. Now, they were rushing according to the map, but they had not met a single person in the past few days. This was very strange. Mo Gue studied the map for a long time. Although there were several paths to the next scene, the path that they had chosen would not be so desolate. After all, this was the safest and fastest path that Mo Gue had analyzed. How could they not have met a single person? If Mo Gue came from the future, he would definitely shout that this was illogical. Chapter 472. But soon, Mo Gue didn't have time to think about why he hadn't met anyone else. Because just then, an unfamiliar voice rang out in the sky. All contestants, please pay attention. The Battle Royale mode will be activated in half an hour. In this mode, the only thing the contestants have to do is to survive until the next morning. Those who survive will be able to continue the next half of the competition, and the top 10 contestants in the Battle Royale mode will have a chance to draw a prize. This lottery will be very important to your upcoming competition, so you must work hard and strive to be in the top 10. End of notice. The voice disappeared, but all the competitors were on high alert. Battle Royale mode? What the hell was that? Pack up and prepare for battle, Mo Gue immediately said. He knew this competition wouldn't be so simple. After putting away the tents, everyone took out their weapons and stood on guard. Not far from Phoenix's group was the corpse of a large magical beast. The corpse had already been reduced to white bones, and it was unknown how long it had been there. Mo Gue directly led Fengwu and Melissa into the huge pile of bones. The bones were very large and covered the three of them, making it impossible for anyone outside to see them. Half an hour quickly passed. Whether it was the competitors or the audience, everyone was curious about the Battle Royale mode. Finally, amidst everyone's doubts, the Battle Royale mode was activated. Kill, roar, roar roar roar, kill kill kill. When half an hour had passed, everyone suddenly heard the sound of Battle Royale mode being activated. Then, they heard a series of angry roars filled with murderous intent and bloodthirsty aura. At this moment, the entire desert became lively. A large number of zombies and low-level magical beasts appeared out of nowhere and rampaged in the desert. Their eyes were glowing red, and their mouths were constantly howling. That soaring murderous aura was frightening to look at. Ah! Mo Gue sucked in a breath. Too scary. Melissa covered her mouth, not daring to make a sound. She was afraid of attracting the attention of those things outside. So many. Fengwu frowned. There were so many monsters outside. What should they do? Fortunately, they had the foresight to find such a place to hide. This skeleton still had the original aura of the magic beast, so the monsters outside couldn't find them for a while. However, they didn't dare to make a sound, afraid that they would be discovered. Fengwu obediently hid, she closed her mouth and did not speak. She could not feel any life aura from those things outside. Little Sister Alpaca stood beside Fengwu and secretly looked at the situation outside. He really wouldn't have known if he hadn't seen it. Now that he saw it, he was shocked. There were so many monsters. Were they trying to scare him to death? The monsters outside appeared in groups. These things did not seem to be intelligent. They were only given the instinct to kill. Fengwu was a little disappointed. If only they had the ability to think, she could be friends with them and not be afraid. Main God. Dream on, I'm guarding against you. So scary, so scary. Little Sister Alpaca was so scared that she shrank into Fengwu's arms. On the screen outside the arena, a large number of monsters were placed around the contestants. These monsters began to chase after the contestants as soon as they saw them. Those who were lucky, like Feng Wu and the others, found a place to hide and were not discovered for a while. Those who were unlucky became the targets of these monsters as soon as they appeared and died miserably. On the field, Ming Shi and Tianya were one of the few people walking at the front of the group. These people who walked in front of everyone all chose the more difficult path, but also the shortest path. Ming Shi and Tianya had chosen the most difficult path. Even during the day, one or two powerful demonic beasts would occasionally block their path. If Ming Shi and Tianya weren't abnormally strong experts, they would have long since been slapped to death by the demonic beasts along the way. The two hid in the desert before the Battle Royale mode was activated. Now that Ming Shi was alert enough to sprinkle some powder to conceal their presence, they were not discovered by the monsters as soon as they appeared. Irene immediately hid in a big box. She had obtained the box by opening it. Hiding in the box would not only make her immune to all damage, but also isolate her scent. The box was also a unique item. However, when Irene opened it, she felt it was useless. It would have been better to give her a magic equipment that could increase her speed or increase her attack. Giving her such a box, was she supposed to hide in the box if she didn't want to? Originally, Irene refused to hide in the box. However, she knew what was going on with the Battle Royale mode. When there was nothing around her that could hide her, she immediately thought of the box that she had forgotten about. She immediately hid in it without hesitation. She knew how terrifying the Battle Royale mode was. It was safer to hide first. On the other side, Zicheng brought Eve to hide behind two big rocks. He carefully erased their scent. The demon wolf was a monster. For safety's sake, Zicheng also erased its scent. When the Battle Royale mode was activated, Zicheng and Eve saw the situation outside. The two of them were glad that their quick-wittedness had saved them this time. If they were stupid enough to hold their weapons and wait for the battle, they would have been surrounded by the monsters by now. What was unexpected was Zhuan, the girl who just became enemies with Feng Wu. Zhuan was wearing a red cloak and disappeared in front of everyone. This cloak was also a unique item. It had the function of invisibility and concealing aura. Once she wore the cloak, no matter what, no one would be able to discover her. However, this cloak was not omnipotent. Although she could not be discovered, she could not be attacked and also could not be attacked. Once she took the initiative to attack or was hit by someone while wearing the cloak, the invisibility function would automatically lose effect. The cloak's owner would immediately appear in front of others. Therefore, the cloak could only hide her from others, but it could not protect her. It was unlike Irene's box, which had the function of being immune to all attacks. With the invisibility cloak, June was completely fine. She carefully avoided all the monsters and zombies. She was very careful and did not dare to touch anything. Those who didn't get the special items and didn't react in time weren't so lucky. On the screen, a large number of contestants were killed by these magical beasts, and died tragically. Only a few people escaped, but even if they escaped, it wasn't necessarily safe. There were magical beasts and zombies everywhere, and if they weren't careful, they would still die. Chapter 473. The night brought endless slaughter. Screams filled the sky as countless contestants lost their qualifications to participate in the competition under the claws and jaws of the monsters. Outside the contestants' respawn area, a large number of contestants would appear from time to time. At this time, only half of the contestants were left, and the number was still decreasing. When the monsters appeared, a large leaderboard appeared beside the screen. The names of the contestants and the number of monsters they killed appeared on the leaderboard. The leaderboard was constantly changing, but the difference between the rankings wasn't large. Until now, there had yet to be any players that would make people's eyes light up. The number of monsters on the leaderboard wasn't very high. Normally, it would be around 10. Fengwu rubbed her stomach, a sad expression on her face. "I'm hungry," Mo Gue and Marisa stood motionless beside Fengwu, as if they were facing a great enemy. The monsters weren't as dense as before. Instead, they spread out in all directions. There weren't as many monsters guarding Mo Gue's bones as before. Most of them had already left. Of course, they wouldn't go too far. Similarly, a leaderboard appeared above the arena. The leaderboard was glittering with a golden light. Amidst the golden light, the names of the participants and the number of monsters they had killed jumped up and down. The competition was intense. Everyone understood that the top 10 of the Great Battle Royale was most likely calculated based on this leaderboard. If they wanted to get into the top 10, they would have to continuously kill monsters. Moreover, they would have to kill more monsters than anyone else. Kill our way out? Marisa asked with uncertainty. She knew her own strength. With so many seniors in front of her, it was impossible for her to get into the top 10. Her goal was to survive until the end of the Battle Royale. As long as she could survive until the end of the Battle Royale, she would have made a name for herself in the eyes of Star Hall. If she wanted to join Star Hall in the future, this competition would be a good bargaining chip. Mo Gue thought for a few seconds before nodding. He wanted to fight for a spot in the top 10. Although his chances of success were very low, so low that it was practically impossible, there was still Fengwu. He knew how strong Fengwu was. Perhaps Fengwu could do it. With that in mind, Mo Gue nodded in agreement. Taking a step back, even if he and Fengwu did not succeed, it did not matter. There was a place they could retreat to, and their lives would not be in danger. Xiao Wu, wanna go kill some monsters? Mo Gue turned to ask Fengwu. Hungry? Fengwu blinked and looked up at him. I'll eat after killing the monsters, he asked uncertainly. Fengwu nodded in agreement. Thus, the girl leaped out from her hiding place with her sword in hand and began to kill in all directions. Without fighting spirit, she still had strength, sword skills, and physical strength. Therefore, Fengwu rushed over and quickly killed 2 zombies. In fact, zombies were much easier to deal with than magical beasts, because zombies had a weakness, and that was their heads. Once their heads were blown off, they would no longer be immortal. Magical beasts, on the other hand, were nimble and had thick skin and flesh. These magical beasts were much harder to deal with than zombies. Fengwu killed her way into a group of monsters. Her graceful sword skills and nimble movements allowed her to kill monsters much faster than Mo Gue. Although Mo Gue was also killing monsters, he was not as talented as Fengwu. Naturally, he did not have Fengwu's strength and speed. At the same time, Ming Shi and Skycliff moved as well. The two of them each chose a group of monsters and charged in. Their sword skills flowed like water, and in a short while, many monsters were lying on the ground. Zicheng and Irene also began to move. As the female lead, Zicheng naturally needed her. As for Irene, she knew that this lucky draw opportunity was very rare and would be very beneficial for the competition later on. So, no matter what, she had to fight for it. Eve hid in a corner, not daring to go out and fight. She was so afraid that her entire body was trembling. These monsters were too terrifying. They all opened their bloody mouths and roamed around them with a stench of blood and stench. Eve was quite frightened. How could she dare to fight for the top 10? She only wanted to survive until the end. However, Eve, who had a 100 favorability rating with Zicheng, was full of admiration for Zicheng's bravery. Although she was afraid, she looked at Zicheng with worship, not worrying about her safety. This was the benefit of having a 100 favorability rating. No matter what, Eve always put herself first. Even though she was scared to death, she was still constantly worried about Zicheng's safety. If something really happened to Zicheng, she would definitely rush over without hesitation. Even if she died for Zicheng, she would not hesitate. Other than these people, many powerful 5th and 6th grade experts had also started to farm monsters to earn points. As seniors, they couldn't find a place to hide like those junior brothers and sisters. If they did such a thing, they would probably be laughed at to death by others. Apart from observing the situation at the beginning, all the seniors who had been hiding chose to go on stage to earn points. Everyone was aiming for the top 10. As soon as they entered, the battle became much more intense. Because the contestants couldn't use their battle chi or magic power, this battle was incomparably difficult. Even the 5th and 6th grade experts suffered heavy casualties. There weren't many 7th grade contestants because the 7th grade was considered a graduating class. Being able to enter the graduating class was already a proof of their strength. Although this was a rare opportunity, there weren't many 7th grade contestants. Only a few people came in to play out of boredom. Most of them stayed outside to support the teacher's work, or simply to be spectators. The competition for points continued. Although the number of people who chose to fight wasn't small, even more people chose to seek stability. They chose to hide in a relatively safe place, only wanting to persevere until morning so that they could continue participating in the competition. Regardless of what others thought, Fenwu buried herself in killing monsters without hesitation. Fenwu was a little expressionless loli who liked cute little things. She had no love for these monsters that didn't have the ability to think, so she didn't feel any psychological burden when killing monsters. Moreover, Fenwu had spirit spring water, a good item that could relieve fatigue. When killing monsters, Fenwu also gave a bit of spirit spring water to Mo Gue. With the support of Fenwu's spirit spring water, although Mo Gue didn't squeeze into the top 10, he still managed to achieve a good result. Half an hour before dawn, a silver light suddenly shot out from the horizon, and the ground changed. The places that could be used as cover were all gone, and everyone was exposed to the monster. The people who originally chose to seek stability paled. They hurriedly picked up their weapons and started fighting. Chapter 474. Marissa's reaction was pretty good. Once she realized that the bones around her had disappeared, she immediately pulled out her sword to protect herself. Alpaca's sister also scratched the ground with her hooves. Fortunately, most of the monsters around them had been cleared, so they didn't encounter any danger. Eve, on the other hand, wasn't so lucky. She was hiding in a corner and thought that she was safe, so she didn't take any precautions. Even Zicheng didn't expect this to happen, so Zicheng, who was busy killing monsters, didn't think that the objects she was hiding in would disappear. Since she didn't think about it, she naturally didn't notice Eve's safety beforehand. The result was that Eve only had time to scream before her stomach was torn open by the monsters. After a blood-curdling scream, Eve received her lunch box just like that. Zicheng wanted to save her, but it was too late. She was a bit far from Eve, so she couldn't reach her in time. The final battle mode had been activated. Everything that could be used as a hiding place was taken away by the Lord God, and the contestants had to survive in the last half an hour. The weak mage students wanted to cry. They were just weak mages with weak health. Why did they have to fight these monsters with weapons? Woo-woo. This competition isn't fair, it's not fair. They collectively protested. This is too unfair. Our mage students have weak health, and they actually want us to kill monsters with the swordmaster students. What kind of justice is this? This is blatant favoritism. Why do we mage students have to kill monsters like the swordmaster students? We can't even use magic, how can we kill monsters? The two mage students who had just been eliminated from the competition started complaining to their friends as soon as they came out of the revival area. They felt that the school was biased towards the swordmaster students. If they weren't biased, why would they come up with this idea? The mage and swordmaster students sealed their abilities and sent them to the competition. The swordmaster students were all as strong as magical beasts. Even if they didn't have battle chi, they could still survive with their stupid strength. What about the mage students? They didn't have any strength or stamina, but they had to do the same thing as the swordmaster students. They couldn't accept it. He refused to accept it. For a moment, all kinds of dissatisfied voices rang out outside the arena. The loudest voice came from the mage department. When facing the swordmaster department, they had all kinds of feelings of superiority. To be able to become a mage was an existence that was like being favored by the heavens. On the other hand, the people from the swordmaster department were just a bunch of people who had no talent in magic and could only learn fighting aura. Who didn't know that on this continent, mages were the most respected? Most of the famous alchemists and pharmacists studied magic. There were very few master pharmacists and master alchemists among the swordmasters. Because they were gifted with talents that most people did not have, the students of the mage school had always been proud. They always felt that they were nobler than the students of the other schools and that their future achievements would definitely be higher than those of the other schools. But now, they were being trampled under the feet of the swordmaster department. Most of the people left on the field were from the swordmaster department. As for the mage department, only a few of them were able to survive. These people were all standing at the top of the Notre Dame du Starlight. Those with average strength had already been eliminated. This was only the second scene and so many people had already been eliminated. The later scenes would only get more and more people eliminated. This made the people who were left on the field take the following matches seriously. Half an hour passed by quickly. The only one who managed to survive the night was June, who did not kill any monsters. June relied on her powerful equipment. This night, she was definitely the most relaxed one. The invisibility cloak helped her a lot. Although the Lord God had already taken away all the concealment items, he wouldn't touch the contestants' own items. This invisibility cloak was the only item that June had gotten from the chest, so naturally, it was allowed to stay on the field. Among all the people left on the field, she was the only one with 0 points. Although the word 0 didn't look good, June didn't complain. As long as she could stay until the end, so be it. That invisibility cloak is too strong. How could it drop such a cheat-like item? Someone outside the field noticed June and her invisibility cloak and said unhappily. Isn't that so? She can't just walk all the way to the end with the invisibility cloak. That's too unfair to the other contestants. That's right. It's not fair, not fair. Some people started to question whether the invisibility cloak should be counted as a contestant's item. This item was too cheat-like and unfair to the others. Some people felt that luck was also a kind of strength. She was the only one who got the invisibility cloak out of so many people. Didn't they say that her luck was good? During the entrance exam, luck was also counted as part of the exam. Therefore, it was reasonable for June to get the invisibility cloak. The people on both sides were arguing fiercely. On the stage, Tamancha was also asking the same question. Vice Principal, there are many people in the audience who are questioning whether the invisibility cloak should be counted as an item. The invisibility cloak's ability is too strong. The students are very concerned about whether as long as they wear the invisibility cloak, they can walk all the way to the end without worrying about being chased by monsters or other dangers. Actually, although the invisibility cloak seems to be very advantageous in the competition, it won't be very useful in the later stages of the competition. Therefore, everyone's worries are unnecessary. When the school chose to put the invisibility cloak in the contestants' items, they had already thought of all kinds of possibilities and made countermeasures to deal with these possibilities. We definitely won't let someone win all the way just because they got a powerful item. This competition is very serious. We won't allow such a possibility to exist. The vice principal stroked his beard seriously. He looked very dignified when he was so serious. These students must be admiring this great vice principal in their hearts. Everyone below the stage. Principal, we want to report that the vice principal is acting cool again. When the audience found out that the invisibility cloak wouldn't be very useful in the later stages of the competition, they were finally relieved. As long as the competition was fair, it was fine. Everyone expressed their trust in the vice principal's words. Although the vice principal was often crazy and unreliable, he won't lie when it came to important matters. Of course, it was hard to say for small matters. The whole school knew that the vice principal was narrow-minded. Many people who offended the vice principal were very miserable because of many small matters. In the arena, when the first ray of sunlight appeared in the sky, everyone felt like they had just survived a disaster. Oh my God! They almost thought that they were going to die here. Most of the guys almost shed tears. The girls also heaved a sigh of relief. Everyone was exhausted from the night. They couldn't remember how many monsters they had killed or how many times they had been scratched by these monsters. Right now, they only felt that their bodies didn't belong to them anymore. Chapter 475. A battle royale had actually caused 70 to 80% of the contestants on the field to disappear. Those who survived were all experts with both strength and luck. Of course, there were also those who were lucky enough to survive, but these people were very rare, less than 5 of them. After the last refresh of the leaderboard, the points had completely stabilized. The first place on the leaderboard was Skycliff with 780 points. The second place was Ming Shi with 775 points. The third place was a 7th grade senior with 670 points. The 5th place was Fenwu with 620 points. The 10th place was Triple X with 560 points. Killing a monster was worth 5 points. Even Skycliff, who had killed the most monsters, didn't kill more than 200. The top 10 had been determined. Just like the previous rules said, those who got into the top 10 would get a chance to draw a prize. The other contestants were all envious of the top 10 contestants. It was worth mentioning that there were 3 second-grade girls in the top 10. The 3 of them were Feng Wu, who was in 1st place and 5th place, Zi Cheng, who was in 6th place, and Irene, who was in 7th place. The 3 girls were very close to each other in terms of points, with only a few monsters separating them. 3 second-grade girls rushing into the top 10. This was simply impossible in previous years. In the past, it was already amazing to have 1 dark horse appear at the same time, but this time there were actually 3 dark horses. Moreover, 2 of the 3 dark horses were actually mages. Mages with low health were relatively weak in the early stages. Who would have thought that these 2 girls would actually fight their way into the top 10? The mages outside the field could finally hold their heads high. At least they didn't lose too much face. With 2 dark horses, let's see who would dare to look down on the mages. The Swordmaster students in the same grade as Fenwu were very surprised. No one would have thought that there would be a dark horse among the second-grade swordmasters. The mages were very proud. It was a pity that the first place in the grade, Ajur, didn't sign up for the competition. Otherwise, there would definitely be 3 dark horses. Fenwu and the other 2 found a place to sleep under the sun. I forgot to mention that after the match ended, the objects that had disappeared from the arena returned to their original positions. Therefore, Fenwu and the others were able to find a place to rest. They slept for several hours. During the day, everyone was resting. Almost no one used this time to travel. The Fenwu girl was very satisfied to be able to have a good fight. Eating the grilled fish and drinking the fish soup, the Fenwu girl squinted her eyes happily. Finally, she could eat. By the time Mo Gue woke up, the sky was already dark. Damn, he had slept through the entire day. Just as Mo Gue was thinking about how to spend the night, Fenwu suddenly threw a pile of things at his feet. This, where did you get this? Mo Gue almost spat out the fish soup in his mouth. His eyes widened as he stared at the wolf meat in front of him. Weren't these wolf corpses the ones they killed? Weren't those corpses taken away by the Lord God? Where did this come from? Mo Gue thought, dumbfounded. I picked it up. Fengwu looked at Mo Gui expressionlessly. Picked up. Very good, very strong. The question was, when did she pick it up? Why didn't he see it? Why are you giving it to me? Forgive his lack of imagination, but he really couldn't understand why Fengwu would pick it up. Grill meat. Fengwu said with bright eyes. As she spoke, there seemed to be a suspicious droplet at the corner of her mouth. Mo Gui was speechless. He didn't seem to have starved her. I'll grill it. Marisa covered her mouth and smiled. She took the wolf meat that Fengwu had thrown out and began to skillfully grill it. Coming from a family of hunters, Marisa's grilling skills were very good. Even though the wolf meat wasn't delicious, it still made people drool. There was too much meat, and Mo Gui didn't want to let her do it alone, so he helped. They didn't do anything else for the entire night. After the battle, the corpses had clearly disappeared. Where did Fengwu get them? Mo Gui couldn't understand, so he asked Fengwu curiously. Fengwu tilted her head. I picked them up after killing them. There's too much to fit. Don't tell me you want to pick up all the magical beasts you killed and grill them. Mo Gui looked up at the sky at a 45-degree angle. Early the next morning, Fengwu's group set off again with a space full of grilled wolf meat. In a faraway country, a young man passed through the gate and walked into a majestic old house. Young Master Xiazhua, you're back. Hello, young Master Xiazhua. Hello, young Master Xiazhua. When the youth appeared, the youths who were passing by immediately stopped to greet him respectfully. Xiazhua nodded calmly and walked into the courtyard he lived in. That must be young Master Xiazhua. He looks so impressive. Look at his aura, he's almost as strong as young Master Caesar. A young man said admiringly. Young Master Xiazhua has finally made a name for himself. He went to the tomb of the sea god and came back as an ice mage. He's a peerless genius. Apart from young Master Caesar, young Master Xiazhua is the strongest in the clan. I wonder if young Master Xiazhua is still looking for servants. I want to sign up. Me too, me too. Xiazhua was not interested in what was happening in the front courtyard. He walked back to his courtyard alone. In the courtyard, Yuan was instructing the new maidservants to clean the courtyard. Originally, Xiazhua did not have the talent for cultivation, so there were not many maidservants serving him. Ever since Xiazhua's talent changed, his originally quiet courtyard had become completely lively. Many servants who wanted to turn from sparrows to phoenixes wanted to serve Xiazhua, but not many of them were chosen. There was no way the butler would allow anyone with bad intentions to serve Xiazhua. He had chased away those with bad characters and ulterior motives when he was choosing servants. He only kept those who were honest and hardworking. Young Master Xiazhua, you're back. Yuan ran over happily when she saw Xiazhua. I'll go back to my room first. Send my lunch to my room, Xiazhua said, rubbing Yuan's head. Yuan nodded and watched Xiazhua return to his room. Back in his room, Xiazhua went to the window and looked in a certain direction. It's almost time for the wood heart to be born. It's time to get ready. Xiazhua mumbled to himself. His eyes were filled with a complicated yet determined look. The desert wasteland was a place where not even a blade of grass could grow. No plants could grow here, and water was scarce. It was not supposed to be inhabited by humans, yet people kept venturing into the wasteland. Anlu town was just a small town with a small population. Anlu town had a population of around 20 to 30,000. Not far from Anlu town was the desert wasteland. If one wanted to enter the desert wasteland, they had to go through Anlu town. Chapter 476. All the other entrances were surrounded by layers of poisonous miasma. If anyone touched the miasma, they would immediately die from the poison, let alone enter. Anlu town was very quiet. Other than the natives, very few people would come here. But recently, more people came, and these people were all here to ask about the desert wasteland. Auntie, may I ask if something strange has happened in the desert recently? Why are there so many people here? 10 young men and women of different styles were walking on the streets of Anlu town, covered in dust. If they were used to strangers coming here, the townspeople were not as surprised as they were at the beginning. I don't know what happened. Since a while ago, more people have been coming here. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. A plainly dressed auntie sighed. When no one came here before, she felt that this place was very quiet. Now that people came, she was worried that something would happen. Auntie, don't worry. It won't be a bad thing. The purple-haired girl said gently to the auntie. I hope so. The auntie sighed again. She did not stay on the street. She walked into her house and closed the door. She didn't even say anything. Why did she leave? The blue-haired girl complained. Let's find a place to stay first. The gray-haired man walking in front turned around and said, then walked away without another word. The others could only follow. The black-haired girl looked around curiously and saw a small dog walking on the street. She wanted to talk to the dog, but the blond man beside her pulled her away. I'm sorry, we only have 3 rooms left. Can you take a look? The owner of the hotel stood in front of the gray-haired man and said politely. No, I don't want to stay in the same room with others. I refuse. The blue-haired girl immediately shouted. I want those 3 rooms. Here's the money. The gray-haired man pretended that he didn't win and paid the owner without hesitation. No, why don't we go to other hotels? Maybe they don't have empty rooms. The girl said. There are only 2 inns in this town, and there aren't many rooms. These 3 rooms are only empty because someone entered the desert today. The other inn won't have any empty rooms. Irene couldn't hold it in any longer. This woman relied on the fact that she was a 7th-year student and had been blabbering non-stop. She had opinions about this and that. Did she think that they were on a trip? How would you know if you haven't seen it? Also, what right do you have to talk to me like that as a burden? The blue-haired girl looked coldly at Irene, her face full of dissatisfaction. Irene just pretended not to see it. If she was dissatisfied, then so be it. Anyway, she didn't want to tolerate it anymore. Senior Yaoyue, Irene, stop fighting. Zicheng looked at the 2 of them worriedly, not knowing how to persuade them. This Yaoyue, relying on the fact that she was a 7th-year senior and had a family behind her, she didn't like anyone. If it wasn't for the fact that he wanted to leave a good impression, Zicheng wouldn't have bothered with this woman. What does it have to do with you? Who do you think you are? You're just a burden. I really don't understand why the school agreed to let 3 second-year students join this mission. What are they doing here? Dragging us down. Yaoyue was getting more and more dissatisfied. As she spoke, she glared at Fengwu, who didn't provoke her, and only then did she feel a little better. If you want to leave now, you can leave at any time. The gray-haired man, Mogfelt, said with a gaze as cold as ice. Yaoyue still shut her mouth. She dared to get angry at Zicheng because the 3 of them were only 2nd-year rookies. However, Mogfelt was in the top 10 of the 7th year. His strength wasn't something she could compare to. In front of such a strong person, no matter how dissatisfied Yaoyue was, she could only shut her mouth. That's right, this group of people wasn't just anyone. They were the top 10 chosen from the Extreme Survival Challenge. These 10 people were the 7th year's 10th place Mogfelt, 7th year's Yaoyue, 7th year's Huizhua, 6th year's 1st place Ming Shi, 6th year's 5th place Tang Nuod, 5th year's 1st place Skycliff, 5th year's 2nd place Ant, and 3 second-year girls, Fengwu, Irene, and Zicheng. These 10 people were all the contestants with the highest overall score in the competition. Among the 10 people, Mingxi was first, Skycliff was second, Fenwu and the other two girls took up 6, 7, and 8 places. Fenwu was 8th, and Zicheng was 6th. Originally, in the original work, Zicheng's ranking would have been first. However, because in the original work, Elena would die in the tomb of the god of gods in the two-world battlefield, Mingxi didn't participate in this activity. None of the members of their team participated. Without Mingxi and Skycliff, and because Mogfelt and the other strong people weren't interested in this competition, Zicheng got first place in the original work, and his name shook the whole school. This time, there were too many unexpected factors. Several strong people who shouldn't have appeared. In the competition scene, she couldn't use any of her cheat fingers. This caused Zicheng to only get 6th place. Zicheng himself wasn't too satisfied with this result. However, there were too many strong people in the senior grade who participated. Her influence couldn't be shown at all. It was very difficult to fight for first place. In order to be stable, Zicheng could only choose to stay in the top 10. Irene had the same idea as her. Irene was determined to snatch the heart of wood from the female lead, especially after knowing that the world would be destroyed because of Zicheng. This time, no matter what, she had to snatch it. If she couldn't ascend to the celestial realm before the female lead, wouldn't she only be waiting for death? No matter what, she couldn't do this. She hadn't lived long enough. Yao Yu, who quarreled with them just now, was a very outstanding person among the 7th grade girls. This time, she was lucky to snatch a place at the bottom of the top 10. Seeing that there were 3 2nd grade students who were ranked higher than her, it would be strange if she was in a good mood. When she was in a bad mood, she would want to find trouble. This was why she would often ask people to drag her down. Along the way, Yao Yu would occasionally find trouble with Fenwu and the other two. Of course, her main target wasn't Fenwu, but Irene and Zicheng. She wanted to find trouble with Fenwu, but Fenwu didn't understand. She didn't understand your roundabout taunts, she would brazenly say unpleasant things, she would just look at you expressionlessly until you couldn't continue. She couldn't get any benefits from Fenwu, so she could only set her sights on the other two girls. Anyway, no matter what Irene and Zicheng said, Yao Yu would find a topic to find trouble with them. If these two girls weren't strong enough, they would have been bullied to the point of crying. Chapter 477. No matter how unwilling Yao Yu was, she could not give anyone face, but she couldn't ignore the Captain Mogfuli. Mogfuli's strength in the 7th grade was much stronger than her. She knew that this time she was able to participate in this special mission, a big reason was because of her good luck. There were many people in the 7th grade who were stronger than her. Those strong people didn't participate in this competition, which gave her the opportunity to participate in this mission. Yao Yu didn't dare to offend Mogfuli, who had a prominent reputation in the 7th grade. Don't look at how she mocked and ridiculed Fenwu and others, it was only because they were young and their strength couldn't surpass her, so she had nothing to fear. There were only 3 rooms, but their group had 10 people. Among these 10 people, there were 6 boys and 4 girls. When they were dividing the rooms, the 6 boys were divided into 2 rooms and the 4 girls were divided into 1 room. This division was very fair. Originally there were more people on the boys' side. Although Yao Yu wanted to stay alone, she didn't dare to provoke Mogfuli. She could only agree with this division method with an ugly face. The girls' room wasn't very big. Fortunately, there were 2 beds in this room. 2 people to 1 bed was completely fine. But the problem was, who would share a bed with Yao Yu? I'll sleep on this bed, you 3 will sleep on the other. Yao Yu didn't think about sharing a bed with any of them. She directly laid down on the bed and announced the ownership of the bed under her. Senior Yao Yu, you're too much. Irene couldn't help but slap the table and stood up. I'm the senior, listen to me or listen to you. Yao Yu looked up and said with a smile that wasn't a smile. She couldn't deal with Mogfuli, but she couldn't deal with these girls. You. Irene still wanted to argue. Unfortunately, Yao Yu didn't pay attention to the three of them. She casually took out a romance novel from her space ring and began to read it. She didn't care what Irene was saying at all. Irene was so angry that she almost fainted. What kind of people were these? 7th grade seniors. As seniors, shouldn't they take care of their juniors? What was with all this fighting over beds? Flip's table. Zicheng saw that Irene wanted to rush up and argue with her, so he immediately stopped her and shook his head lightly. Forget it, I'll listen to senior sister. Although Zicheng also felt that Yao Yu was too much, he didn't want to make things difficult for her because of this small matter. Irene also knew that no matter how overboard this Yao Yu was, she was still a 7th-year senior. Going against her would not end well for second-year students like them. Taking a deep breath, Irene decided to endure it for now. If there was a chance, she would definitely make Yao Yu suffer. What do we do now? Sleeping with the three of us is a little difficult. Irene said. Wasn't it difficult? This bed was just an ordinary single bed. It was a little crowded even for 2 people, not to mention 3 people. Even if the 3 of them were all slender young girls, it was still impossible to sleep with 3 people. How about I make a bed on the floor, you and Funwu can sleep on the bed? Zicheng thought about it and said considerately. Irene snorted disdainfully in her heart. The female lead really didn't forget to show her kindness and magnanimity no matter where. Those who didn't know her true nature would probably be touched by her kindness. Thinking of this, she turned her head to look at Funwu, who hadn't spoken all this time. After interacting with Funwu a few times, she also knew that Funwu's temperament was simple. She was a little worried that Funwu would be deceived. After looking over, Irene immediately knew that her worries were unnecessary. Funwu didn't have any thoughts at all. You guys sleep on the bed. I have this. After Funwu finished speaking, she took out a hammock from her spatial ring. This hammock was bought by Funwu long ago. Funwu usually bought things that interested her when she went shopping. Although she bought the most food, she also bought a lot of miscellaneous things. Taking out the hammock from her spatial ring, she tied the hammock to the corner of the room and spread a comfortable blanket over it. This way, it looked even more comfortable than their bed. This bed was only used in ordinary people's homes. Under the bed was a wooden board and a quilt, so the comfort was very limited. Funwu made her bed, took off her shoes and lay on it to try it out. She narrowed her eyes in satisfaction. Just like that, the bed separation incident passed. At least it didn't cause any big disputes. Irene walked out of the room and found a more secluded place to contact Shozo. Knowing that Shozo had already arrived, she secretly heaved a sigh of relief. It had been more than 10 days since the end of the individual competition. 15 days ago, when the final results of the individual competition were released, many people couldn't believe it. How did the 3 girls stand out in front of so many seniors? If it wasn't for the fact that the entire process was broadcasted outside the arena, no one would believe that the 3 girls had done something that many seniors couldn't do. After the competition ended, they were brought together to the Vice-Dean's office, and the Vice-Dean personally issued this mission. The school wanted them to enter the desert wasteland and find the sealed heart of wood. Legend had it that 1,000 years ago, the desert wasteland was once a beautiful grassland. However, for some unknown reason, the grassland became a desert, and no plants could grow there anymore. No one knew that this grassland, which was originally full of vitality, was also the birthplace of the heart of wood. 1,000 years ago, when the heart of wood was born, it only had a weak spiritual intelligence. It was very weak, but to a wood-type magician, it was more important than a divine artifact. 1,000 years ago, in order to obtain the heart of wood, countless wood-type experts entered this place. Later, a great war broke out, and the oasis became a desert. The heart of wood was also sealed by a powerful person, and since then, no one had seen the heart of wood. Now that the seal was about to be lifted, the heart of wood would reappear in the world. No one knew how many experts would be attracted this time. The Star Hall and the Notre Dame du Starlight knew that with the reappearance of the heart of wood, many experts would gather here and start a life and death struggle. Although they knew, they couldn't stop it. Whether it was the Star Hall or the Notre Dame du Starlight, the purpose of their existence was to protect the human world from being invaded by foreign races. They couldn't interfere in the fight for resources among the human race. Because of these reasons, the Notre Dame du Starlight only sent a few of them over, and didn't send more powerful teachers. As for the Star Hall, it was said that there were already people rushing over, but those people wouldn't intervene in this fight. After reading the original work, she naturally knew that the Notre Dame du Starlight wanted to obtain the heart of wood. She didn't want to have any ambition, but only wanted to use the power of the heart of wood to change the environment of the desert wasteland, and return the desert wasteland to its former state. Chapter 478. Because of these reasons, the Notre Dame du Starlight only sent a few of them over and didn't send a more powerful teacher. As for the Star Hall, it was said that there were already people rushing over, but those people wouldn't intervene in this fight. After reading the original work, she certainly knew that the Notre Dame du Starlight wanted to get the heart of wood. She didn't want to have any ambition, she just wanted to use the power of the heart of wood to change the desert wasteland's environment and return it to its previous state. Perhaps this process would be very slow, but if it succeeded, it would definitely benefit the people. Unfortunately, the female lead in the original work obtained the heart of wood and made it form a contract. Once the heart of wood formed a contract with a human, of course, it was impossible to put it back in the desert wasteland, so the school's plan couldn't be realized. With so many variables in this life, she didn't believe that Zicheng's female lead aura would still be so invincible. After a simple dinner, Fenwu and the others went to bed early. The next day, everyone began to buy the supplies they needed to enter the desert. From food to daily necessities, there would be no place for them to replenish after entering the desert, so of course, they had to buy it all at once. The townspeople actually loved and hated the sudden appearance of outsiders. These outsiders contributed to the town's economic development, but also decreased the town's safety by a lot. Recently, there were people fighting every 2 to 3 days, and some unscrupulous adventurers openly molested women on the streets. In a short time, the whole town was filled with complaints. The people here couldn't wait for these adventurers to disappear as soon as possible. If they could enter and never come out, that would be even better. A strange treasure was about to appear in the desert wasteland, but it was just a guess and a rumor. No one could confirm this point, so most of the people who came here were still in a wait-and-see state. Although some people had already entered the desert, more people still stayed in the town. They might want to stay for a few more days, or they might want to wait for the news to be confirmed before entering the desert wasteland. In short, no matter what these people were planning, with so many adventurers with different personalities staying here, it was a big trouble for the town's residents. Although the adventurers would not kill ordinary people at will, they would be bullied from time to time, which made it difficult for the residents here to have a good impression of the adventurers. In just a short period of time, some of the better-looking girls had already hidden in their own houses and wouldn't go out easily. Now, the ones walking outside were all ordinary-looking women. The girls didn't dare to rashly go out with their fellow disciples. The townspeople already had a certain degree of fear and dissatisfaction with the adventurers. It was no wonder that Fenwu and the others couldn't get any information when they entered the town yesterday. On the third day, the group of 10 entered the desert on foot. There were no signs of life in this desert. This was a land of death that no one would set foot in. Anyone who wanted to enter this desert could only choose to walk. No one knew why, but as long as they were living creatures, they didn't want to set foot in this desert. It was as if there was something terrifying inside. It was said that a few days ago, there was a soldier who wanted to ride his horse in, but the horse didn't move at all. It had a frightened look on its face and refused to go in no matter what. Even when it was almost beaten to death, it didn't want to move an inch. This happened many times, and in the end, everyone had no choice but to obediently walk in. In the desert wasteland, there was only endless yellow sand and the scorching sun. There were no creatures to be seen. Stepping on this land, the 10 people instantly felt a suffocating pressure. There was also a kind of bone-chilling fear. It was as if there was a man-eating monster in front of them, and this monster was waiting to swallow them all. Fengwu looked at the endless yellow sand and touched the Rui beast baby on her old bag. Her eyes flashed with a trace of doubt. This place is so strange. As soon as I walked in, I felt like I stepped into the gates of hell. Donovan said as he flicked his fingers. Indeed, it is not a good place. Huizhua nodded and responded. Everyone be careful. This place is not simple. Mojiofri said expressionlessly. Everyone's hearts were heavy. They all felt that this mission would not be so easy to complete. But thinking about it, for this mission, the school even held some kind of extreme survival challenge. Making such a big scene, it would be strange if the mission was simple. This place has evil energy. Moreover, the evil energy has formed clouds. Everyone be careful not to be disturbed by the evil energy. Yao Yu's face was ugly as she looked into the distance. Is it an undead? Mojiofri frowned and asked. It could be, or it could be something else. We have to wait until we see it to know. Yao Yu said. Irene and Zicheng had a new level of respect for Yao Yu. They originally thought that she would only find trouble with them and put on the airs of a senior. They didn't expect her to have some ability. Yao Yu was a very rare necromancer in the school. Even in Notre Dame du Starlight, there were not many necromancers. Although they were all students of the mage department, they were all specially guided by specialized teachers. In the school, necromancers were the most mysterious existences. Although Yao Yu's character was not that good, she was definitely a strong one among necromancers. This was also the reason why she was able to successfully obtain a place among so many people. With Yao Yu's reminder, everyone carefully walked towards the place marked on the map. Before leaving Notre Dame du Starlight, the school gave them a map. This map recorded the place where the Heart of Wood was sealed. What they had to do was to bring the Heart of Wood back to the school and hand it over to the vice dean. Rushing from here to the sealed place was not something that could be done in a day or two. Without coming to the desert wasteland, one wouldn't know how big this place was. Walking for 1 or 2 years might not be enough to finish. And the sealed place was in a secret place in the desert wasteland. If they wanted to go there, they would have to walk for at least 3 months in this place to be able to reach it. During these 3 months, they couldn't get lost. Once they got lost, it wouldn't be something that could be done in 3 months. The day in the desert was very long. They walked for a long time before ushering in the night. At night, the temperature dropped to -10 degrees. The cold wind blew on people's body, making them feel as if their whole body was about to be frozen. Fortunately, this was not the virtual world arena. No one had their Do Qi and magic sealed. With the protection of Do Qi and magic, they didn't feel that unbearable. However, everyone still wore heavy coats. Since they couldn't hurry at night, everyone had to find a place to camp. They brought a lot of food and drink here, so there was no need to prepare food. Chapter 479. The desert wasteland at night seemed to have a different kind of loneliness. Standing on this piece of land, one couldn't help but feel a dull feeling in their hearts. Due to their depressed mood, everyone didn't sleep well. After a night's rest, everyone continued on their way. There were quite a few people who entered the desert wasteland recently. They didn't walk for long before they met a group of people who were going the same way. At this time, when they met other people in this place, no one was in the mood to stop and greet them. Each of them carefully stared at the people around them, afraid that these people would rush up and attack them. Fortunately, there weren't many people who directly attacked. Although everyone was looking for treasure, if they didn't see the shadow of the treasure, they naturally wouldn't do such a stupid thing. The desert wasteland was very big. No one knew where the treasure would appear. Although they didn't know the specific location, many people guessed that if the treasure really appeared, the most likely place would be near the center of the desert wasteland. Because of this guess, most people who were interested in the treasure went to the center. 2 months later, they had already walked more than half of the journey. On this day, they were walking through the desert as usual. However, they didn't expect to suddenly see a dilapidated castle in front of them. This castle looked very old, as if it had been damaged by some kind of power. The walls were full of traces of time. Why is there a building here? Goth looked at the dilapidated castle in front of him with some confusion. They had been in the desert wasteland for 2 months. In these 2 months, they hadn't encountered any creatures, nor had they seen any buildings. They hadn't even seen a broken canopy. Now, they suddenly saw a castle in front of them. Although this castle looked very dilapidated, it was still a proper building. Do you want to go in and take a look? Tang Nuod asked Mojiofri. Mojiofri shook his head. This place gives me a bad feeling. For safety's sake, there's no need to go in. As the team leader, Mojiofri was of course considering the safety of the mission. This place is really not right. We walked for 2 months and didn't see any buildings. Suddenly, a castle appeared. No matter how I think about it, it's a bit strange. Ming, she said. Yao Yu, what do you think? Huishua turned to ask Yao Yu. Yao Yu suddenly took out her magic wand and mumbled something. Finally, a white light rushed into the castle. After the white light, nothing appeared. Yao Yu secretly frowned. That shouldn't be the case. He clearly felt that the yin qi in this place was very heavy. Why wasn't there any demonic aura? What's wrong? Seeing Yao Yu frowning, Mojiofri asked. Nothing, my magic didn't sense the existence of the quest spirit. Yao Yu said. Are we still going in? Irene asked. She remembered that such an ancient castle had also appeared in the original work, and the female lead had encountered danger in the castle. In this place, the female lead and male lead met again, and it was the place where their relationship took a step further. However, the people in the team this time were different from the ones in the original work. Would they still enter the castle this time? When she read the original novel, she wanted to complain. It was clearly a very strange thing for a house to suddenly appear in such a dangerous place, okay? How could the female lead and the others go into rest without thinking about anything? This IQ was too high. Let's leave this place. Mojiofri said concisely. Irene silently sighed in relief. They had finally escaped a calamity. As long as they didn't go in, they would be fine. There was great danger inside. If it wasn't for the light of the male and female lead, it was very likely that many people would have died here. Everyone was about to leave, but suddenly the sky was filled with dense clouds. A heavy rain fell without any warning. If it was just ordinary rain, it wouldn't be a problem. However, this rain could actually gradually melt the magic and do-chi barrier that they made. If they couldn't find a place to take shelter from the rain before the barrier melted, who knew what would happen when the rain fell on them? As a last resort, the group of 10 still entered the castle that they didn't really want to enter. The inside of the castle looked the same as the outside. It was very shabby, and there was a lot of dust and debris inside. At a glance, one could tell that this house had been abandoned for a long time. Zicheng and Irene used magic to help the others clear out a clean area. Everyone sat there, and no one spoke. Fengwu's large eyes swept over the surroundings from time to time. Her eyes flashed with doubt, but she didn't say anything. Mingxi held Fengwu's hand, and didn't say anything. This rain that fell without warning made them feel very unusual. Mingxi had a feeling that perhaps this rain was specially made to keep them here. He just didn't know who the person who wanted to make use of this rain to keep them here was. Damn, this rain is too heavy. Luckily we ran fast enough. Otherwise, the barrier on my body would have been melted. A man holding a heavy sword rushed in from the rain, flustered and exasperated. Behind the man, there were several people. These people all looked a little disheveled. There's something wrong with this rain. One of the men said. You don't have to say that. Who has seen such a powerful rain? It can even break through my barrier. How can it be right? The man running at the front said indifferently. I'm not talking about this. The man slightly frowned. He wanted to say something, but at this time, he noticed that there were other people in the house. The other people noticed the man's gaze, and only then did they notice that there were other people in the house. At this time, everyone had to shut up. The few of them found an empty corner, casually used magic to clean up, and sat together. After sitting down, no one spoke again. Mojiofri didn't care about these people. This place didn't belong to them, and they didn't have the right to not let others in to take shelter from the rain. He only needed to look after his own team. What the others wanted to do had nothing to do with him. Less than 2 minutes after this group of people came in, another group of people drenched in the rain rushed in. Irene noticed these people the moment they rushed in. It was actually the male lead and the others. Zicheng. Obviously, Caesar also noticed the female lead at the first moment. Irene touched her chin. She looked at the reincarnated man, Xiaozhua, whose expression didn't change, but whose eyes flashed with a trace of uneasiness. See, your brother may soon become the female lead's puppet. Are you sure you can stop it? I can only try. Xiaozhua responded with his eyes. He really wanted his brother to repent and be saved. He wanted to forget about Zicheng and treat his fiancée well. Unfortunately, his brother was very stubborn. If he insisted on stopping it, he was afraid that it would backfire. So he could only take one step at a time. You're tuning into the Hanli's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.